Good evening, councillors, officers, members of the public, and welcome to this evening's North Area Planning Committee. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the council's YouTube channel, and I welcome viewers joining us online. Can I request that mobile phones are either set to silence or switched off for the duration of the meeting? I'll now run through the protocol for member and public participation and the rules of debate. Please note that the Chair's ruling during the debate will be final. If you have registered to speak, I will introduce you by name and invite you to address the meeting at the appropriate time. The Development Management Officer will introduce the item relating to the planning application and summarise the main points. When this has been completed, I will then invite members of the public who have registered to speak on the item to address the meeting. Members of the committee will then be given the opportunity to ask for clarification from speakers, and the item will then be moved and seconded and debated before a vote is taken. The first item on the agenda are apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Riley, Councillor Sims and Councillor DL, with Councillors Buckingham, Colquhoun and McEwen acting as substitutes tonight.
We also have apologies
from Councillor Carter as well.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Can members confirm that they are coming to the meeting with an open mind and have not predetermined any of the applications? Councillor Buckingham?
Yes, I'm a councillor on Lloyd's ward, but I come with an open mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Colquhoun?
Similarly, Chair, I'm a ward councillor for Lloyd's ward.
Thank you. Do any other councillors have declarations to make? Councillor Shatlock?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I will. For 4.2, land south of Wood Lodge Farm, Huntington Road, Thrapston, I know the farming family very well, so I think it best I leave the meeting for that agenda item. 4.4, Newbrook Farm, Islington, Titchmarsh. I do know the speakers and I do know the applicant, but it wouldn't predetermine me. I have sat on committees for their applications in the past. And finally, 4.6, Friars Close Farm, Main Street, Barnwell. One of the applicants is my wife, so I will have to leave the meeting then as well.
Thank you. That takes us on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of July 2024. Are members happy for me to sign the minutes as a... Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? No. Thank you. That takes us on to agenda item 4, which is the planning applications. We have 16 registered speakers across the 6 applications before committee tonight, and I'll allow each speaker 3 minutes to speak. So the first item on the agenda is NC/24/000230/NMA, the former Weetabix Limited site, Earlstree Road in Corby. And can I ask Bob if you can present this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, members. Just a bit of housekeeping. In consultation with Legal Services, the recommendation in paragraph 1, it says it's recommended the non-material amendment be granted, subject to conditions. That should be paragraph 10, because the numbering has changed. Subparagraph numbering from page 18 is slightly incorrect. It should be 5152, etc., through to the end of the report. And in condition 2, the wording after word below be deleted. The plans will remain. So remove the words unless the variations are agreed by the local planning authority to discharge other conditions attached to this decision. So that's the housekeeping. If there's any issues on that one, I'll move on to the presentation. Chair members, this is an application for an NMA. It's a non-material amendment application. The reference number, which is relevant in this case for you to determine, is NC 2400230, and that was dated the 18th of July. The application has been brought forward to you because of the public interest. I'll sort of quickly summarise that. If I start on to the presentation. I'll read this out. So the non-material amendments, really that's covered under Section 96A of the 1990 Act, and also as amended by the 2008 Act. And there's two things that have changed to this building. One is the finished floor level, and the other one is the height of the building. There's been a curving off of the eaves line, which I'll...
Bob, so can I just stop you a moment? Would
Sorry.
you mind putting the microphone closer? I think there's a few
sorry.
people
Sorry,
who
can't
can't
hear.
hear across.
Yes, so
Thank you,
it's a
that's better.
is that better? Yeah. So non-material amendments application, Section 96A, and there are three elements. There's amendment to the finished floor level. That increases the height modestly of the ridge height of the building, and also there's changes to the eaves line. Now this is pursuant, members, to the 9th of September 22 permission, and that is described below, which is a logistics building with parking, 170 parking spaces, electric charging points as well. This is the actual site plan as it was. This building's the nearest to Hook Close and was more or less 1.5 stories. But the site, you can see, is quite heavily developed as a factory. This is a CGI, so it's not art or artist impression. This shows the development. You see Hook Close on this side, Rockingham Road, and also Pascal Close on this side. And you see beyond that is quite mainly industrial, the Earls Trees Industrial Estate. These trees are not all here. This is only a CGI. In terms of the site layout, it's all the parking arrangements. There's a fire track behind the building, and just to give you a bit of a sort of background, parking 2 access points at the front, and Avon Cosmetics is on this side, Hook Close, Rockingham Road, and Earls Tree Road. Elevations, these are the elevations as approved in 22. West, south, east and north elevations. Just leave that for a few seconds. Now in terms of the impact of the new building, you can see the outline there. Hopefully you can see where my cursor's going. That building, although is smaller, and generally smaller, is actually 2 or 3 metres higher above the datum level here. So what the developers have done during the construction phase, they've actually curved off the slight curve of the eaves line, so that if you were standing here, you wouldn't see the top of the curve, but you'd see less, you'd have a slightly more of a gap to the top of the eaves line. Everything else is as approved in 22. So I'll just let you have a look at that first. This shows the general configuration of the building. So you see the peaks of the ridge dips and then peaks again. And this is the relationship to Hook Close. And I'll ask my architect here, he's going to just tell you a little bit about the increase in the various dimensions. I'll just finish on, this is the actual change to the curve, you can see. It's not substantial, but certainly is, would improve the aspect from Hook Close. Other matters that are not NMA, we've got a landscaping scheme that's been approved back in 22. The implementation has now been approved, so there will be a lot of planting on that back part, and also down Rockingham Road and also at the frontage. So I'll just bring in my colleague here to talk about the dimension changes. Sorry.
Hello there. I'm David Hickman from Hickman Smith Architects. We were appointed on behalf of North Northamptonshire Council to assess the plans against the approval, to check the differences between what's been built on site and the NMA assessment that's been submitted in this July NMA. We checked the floor level difference. We found that there was a 180mm increase in the floor height within the proposals in this NMA. However, because that is within the building, that doesn't have any impact for the residents. The eaves height is 18mm higher as we've assessed it against the original approval, which we deem to be de minimis. And the ridge height is 160mm higher than the approval, which, as you can see on this diagram that Bob's brought up on the presentation, we've shown within, if you just go back one more slide, sorry. You can see, you can see on the slide that we had up earlier on that from where the greatest impact for that is to Hook Close. However, because of the nature of the site and the location of the ridge, you wouldn't actually see the increase in height there, and the height is actually representing approximately a 1% increase. I think we've suggested across the building.
Chair, just to go on in terms of the report itself, you have the recommendation, site description of the actual NMA, and also we've summarised the responses from residents, which is under paragraph 4.2. I'll just go through that. So there is concerns from residents, and then there's a response. And then we had Corby Town Council didn't object originally, but did object to the NMA that was submitted, the first one, and they've continued to their concerns, loss of light, loss of privacy. But this is an NMA, members. It's only, we're only determining, not a new application. It's just determining the NMA. We've done our comparisons of the drawings, as my colleague here has said. We also had a topographical survey done. It was important when I took over the case to make sure that we had accurate position of the building, accurate footprint, and then we brought the architects in to look at the superstructure, looking at the frame, and as the frame developed and became a fully fledged building, the architects have been following that process all the way through. So we've done an overview of all the NMA submissions. We've already talked about the increase in the finished floor level, eaves height and ridge height. Talked about the change to the curve of the eaves, which does help the aspect from Hook Close. So in terms of the conclusion, officers feel the position and footprint of the building, that's in accordance with the permission. The eaves line and main supporting concrete slab changes are minimal, and the building ridge height is already at 14 or so, 15 metres. Has only increased by 160mm. We think our view is that is a de minimis change, and the human eye will not be able to distinguish that. Also, the NMA, as I said earlier, is only concerned with the impact of the material changes to the original permission. The changes made in the current NMA are negligible and considered to be acceptable. These measurements are within tolerance levels to be non-material. Further, during construction, the eaves height, as I said earlier, has been modified, and that's actually improved the aspect from Hook Close. Consequently, officers are recommending the Section 96A pursuant to the permission is granted. There are conditions there. I've mentioned this paragraph would change, but you have all a list of the plans on under condition 2. And also, members, I refer you to the original officer's report from September 22 and also the decision. That's appended in your papers. I think that's it at this point in time. If I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 3 speakers on this application, and the first speaker is Jamie Hume, third-party objector. Would you like to come in? And when you're ready, you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
First of all, under the presumption that this non-material application relates to the building immediately neighbouring Hook Close, Paschal Close and Avon, I'd like to point out to the committee that this application relates to Weetabix Limited on the communications received by residents, despite Weetabix Limited having no affiliation to the development, and Weetabix Limited is in fact another property based on the same street as the development, and therefore this does not make it clear which building this specifically relates to. I'm addressing the committee about the non-material amendment to vary the building height and finished floor level. I and many other local residents have serious concerns for the following reasons. The council's own report into the original planning permission, and as publicly reported, has said that the original planning permission did not comply with the law. As I'm sure the council and this committee are aware, a hearing has been set for the 5th and 6th of November at the Royal Courts of Justice, and it is the positions of the residents and our legal counsel that we request that no decision is made on this application until after that hearing and a decision has been handed down by the courts. I have photographs which are available for the committee of the development which have been taken this week, and I'm rather disappointed that although we've looked at the planning itself, a lot of drawings have been shown but no photographs of the finished building as it stands today. The photos shown compared to the previous building, also shown in photos, show the difference in size and the impact of light pollution to the local residents, along with the poor visual design of the building, which has been agreed with North Northamptonshire Council by the developers. There are also concerns about light being blocked out, impacting Hook Close and Paschal Close respectively, and with the additional height on the building, it is possible to have a greater impact. While the difference does seem very small, based on the footprint and size of the previous building, it has a much bigger impact than what appears to have been taken into account. Please be under no illusions. When I moved to Paschal Close, I was fully aware I was moving to the edge of an industrial estate. However, had this building been constructed prior to my move, I would not likely have moved to this area. The retrospective application is a concern as the building itself is constructed and external works and landscaping are currently taking place. A lack of updates recently from the developer lead us to believe that it is on track to be completed any time and the workforce on site has already been reduced. We've had no contact information for emergencies or the ability to have issues addressed quickly, such as noise and light issues, which have been reported to the planning and environmental health over the previous months. The non-material application states that the floor slabs have been retained, and when asked that the committee requests evidence of this from the developer, as those who have been able to witness the construction on a daily basis can testify the site was excavated during the construction. That was one of the reasons cited for the amendment going in. Additionally, there's been no attempt to rectify it, and the construction's been carried on as if permission were granted. The building is now complete. The residents were told at a meeting about this amendment, but the message to the residents was clear. The building is not over height, and the amendment would not make it over the allowed height granted in the original planning permission. The height of the building was raised as a concern.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes is up. Thank you. Would you mind just staying there in case members have any questions of clarification on material planning issues? No? No, thank you very much. Thank you. Our second speaker is Councillor Mark Pengelly, who's Ward Councillor. I think you know the drill, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. And it is very unusual for me. I think I've not been at a planning meeting for about 8 years and spoke with them, and I do understand all the hard work you do, and it's the reason I'm not on planning, because it's such a difficult committee to be on. I just want to first address the elephant in the room that our colleagues spoke to. It's a shame you didn't get you involved in the first place when this symbolic planning permission was given. The Town Council, and the fact the Town Council didn't make any comment on the first application, all the councillors around this table are aware you only make objections and get involved as a council, especially a town council or a councillor, if you're aware of an issue. And through the council's own admission, they didn't notify the residents. They didn't send letters to the residents. In fact, they sent letters to residents over a mile away. The council admitted as well they didn't put a site notice up. They put a site notice up at the wrong Weetabix site, believe it or not. You can't make up. They put it at the wrong site. And myself and the report from the Evening Telegraph found that site, that notice where it was put wrong. So saying that the town council didn't object in the first place was because the councillors, me, Councillor Colquhoun, Councillor Buckingham, were not aware of it because the residents didn't come to us because they didn't know anything was happening. If residents don't know anything happening, they don't come to you and complain. So that's why there was no complaints made. That's why we didn't come to you as a council. I was going to speak full 5 minutes on this night, but I'm not going to right now. I'm only going to make it short, and I've got to find my notes. The council admitted in full council that the plans did not comply with the law. And so therefore, allowing this to go through tonight, you're allowing something that could be deemed as being wrong in the High Court on the 5th and 6th of November going through. So the best thing today is to adjourn today's decision until you know what's going on at the High Court. That would be fairer for the people from Hook Close here tonight, because they've been dealt really, really bad by the council. I think we all have to admit that. And because the council have admitted it as well by forming the new planning committee, where we're looking at where things have gone wrong in the past. We've admitted things have gone wrong in the past, and Hook Close one of the big ones. I'd ask councillors, I don't know if anybody's been around the site, have any of the councillors been around the site itself? Just the fence on the front of it, it wouldn't be allowed anywhere. And I know by speaking to people like Jamie, who's one of the residents, if he'd have known about it, he would have objected to that fence. Have a look, just take a drive around there and see what you think. It's horrendous, it looks horrible. It's not within the street scene of an industrial estate. It looks something like a prison. So what I'm asking you tonight, I'm not going to say too much on it because I know how busy you all are, is adjourn today's decision, put it to the future, put it till December, and make a decision then for the good people of Hook Close who you've let down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pengelly. Do any members have any questions of clarification? No. Doesn't look like it. Thank you. And the third speaker on this item is James Wright, agent on behalf of the applicant. Again, when you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to cover two key aspects for this application. Firstly, the background to the proposal, and secondly, looking at the extent of the changes. The background. This application is for a non-material amendment to an existing planning permission granted in 2022. Matters relating to the decision-making process for that permission are not relevant to tonight's application, and it's crucial that the committee is aware of that distinction. The 2022 permission included a full townscape and visual impact assessment which appraised the development in terms of scale, massing and siting, and these matters were fully taken into account and agreed with council officers when they granted the 2022 permission. Crucially, the minor changes now proposed are still below the parameters assessed in 2022. This gives a clear indication that the changes cannot be material. NMAs are the legal basis by which small, non-material changes to an existing planning permission are made. They're often used. If a matter is deemed to be non-material, then it should be approved. Number two, the extent of the changes. To put the changes in context, they're about the length of this pencil compared to a building which is 15.5 metres tall. The change represents about 1%. Looking at figure 2 in the officer's report, I struggle to see the difference on paper. The reason is because the changes are so de minimis. It's only because the applicant is a good and professional developer that these changes have even been submitted for approval. The resulting scheme does not alter the nature of the development. In practice, the changes are practically imperceptible to anyone looking at the building. To summarise, this development was approved by officers at this council in 2022 with a proper assessment of the townscape and visual impact taken into account. Matters relating to the decision-making process for that permission are not relevant to tonight's application, and it's crucial that the committee is aware of that distinction. The proposed changes are still below the assessment undertaken in 2022. The changes are about the length of this pencil, representing a 1% variance. The changes are so de minimis that they're practically imperceptible, both when looking at the building and on paper, as shown in figure 2 of the officer's report. I've illustrated why these changes are non-material. The officer's report agrees the changes are non-material. It is clearly correct for the committee to follow the officer's recommendation and grant approval to this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you mind just staying there in case there's any questions from members? No? Thank you very much. And I thank all the speakers on that application. So, for the purposes of debate and in accordance with the Council's Constitution Rules 19.2 and 19.21, I'll move the recommendation stated on page 14 and 23 of your agenda papers, that the non-material amendment be granted subject to conditions listed in paragraph 10. And that the development and condition 2 should read, the development shall conform in all aspects with the plans and details shown in the application as listed below. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shatlock, thank you. Open the floor up for debate. Councillor Best.
Yeah, I'd just like some input maybe from legal as to whether the appeal that the first speaker spoke of has any bearing whatsoever on tonight's decision.
Through you, Chair, no it doesn't. There is a planning permission in law in place.
Thank you. Yeah, as the advice, as we were told, the applicant does have permission in law, and we are purely here to decide whether the changes are material or not in the context of the scheme as a whole. So really we're looking at those heights. Thank you. Councillor Buckingham.
And I wanted to ask the same question, that full clarity around the legal position, especially as the council has said it was wrong in the first place.
The applicant has planning permission as given in September 2022. So we are looking at purely the recommendations on page 14 and 23. Do any other councillors wish to speak on this matter? We are looking at minimal heights here. The eave height is 18 millimetres, which I think you'd find it hard for the naked eye to see that. And height, I think because of the angle of the eaves would be difficult to see. Councillor Jelly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can we have some clarification on the court case that the gentleman that spoke about?
That's not relevant to this application this evening. We're purely considering the application in front of us. Sorry, are you trying to understand the implication of making this decision on the court case?
Well, the gentleman mentioned the fact that there's a court case coming up in a couple of months' time.
I'll let legal.
So, just for clarification, there is a planning permission in place. There is also a challenge to that planning permission. Only a court can quash a planning permission if they decide to do that and if they exercise their discretion to do that. So that's very much if, but maybe, could happen in the future. It might not happen. In terms of how that bears on this application, so you have to treat this as there is planning permission in place at the date of this committee. So there is a lawful planning permission. They are lawfully entitled to implement that permission. If for any reason in the future the planning permission is quashed, that would just mean that this falls away. So it has no impact on that. So you treat this as of today's date, there is a planning permission in place, and what you're being asked to determine is whether the changes that are being proposed by the applicant are non-material in the context of the scheme as a whole. Does that help?
Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. And I do understand and appreciate the advice being given by legal, but I'm still going to probably nag away at you here. It does seem to me a little bit short-sighted, based on what you're saying, that in a month's time, this could be removed by the court. It does maybe seem the sensible idea is to defer it until after that hearing.
I don't think so. We've got it in front of us this evening. If the court decides that the application shouldn't have received planning permission, then it's rescinded, then this just falls away. It's quite a straightforward to me, I think. You can. We would need a seconder. Councillor Buckingham. So, let me just... we need to have a clear reason to defer it.
We need to defer.
We don't need to defer if you need.
My
if you want to
suggestion
defer.
is that we defer in anticipation of this court case going ahead. This has been a very publicised planning application that the council have gone wrong on, and I think only fair to residents that we defer until after the court hearing.
Do you want to add anything? Do you want to add anything?
If I can help, as our legal advisor had said, if you approve this and the court decides to quash that permission, this then gets cancelled, so there's no risk at all. To help members focus your minds on this, an application has been made and it's here for your decision. A permission exists that's lawful. It's been issued and the building is being built out on site. What they're applying for is a non-material. It's a very minor 6-inch difference. Normally, that we would call that de minimis. It doesn't make any difference. The reason it's in front of you is because of the public interest. As I said, this would normally be dealt by officers. In terms of any other application, as he's quite rightly said, there has been publicity, but we're trying to get you to focus on the decision in front of you and only on those facts. The height of the building will only be 6 inches, which is sort of less, well, about that much. And what we're saying, the impact is negligible. And in terms of the risk, if you approve this and subsequently the decision gets quashed, this falls away. So there's no risk to this committee at all. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Watt?
Thank you, Chair. I've got no problem at all with the fact that it's a pencil's height bigger and the floor has been raised by whatever it is, 18 millimeters. The problem I've got, and maybe colleagues will agree, is that I don't want to be part of reinforcing a bad decision. I'd feel a lot better about holding my hand up in favour of this NMA once this court case is over. I think we owe it to the people, particularly of Hook Close, to say, let's just see how this goes before we put our names to it.
Councillor Colkin. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Pardon me, I would echo Councillor Watt's sentiments there. This has been a complete fiasco from day one. It doesn't seem to get any better. We now see the frontage, and I know it's not relevant, Chair, but the frontage of this, I think, shows what the developer has in mind, which is purely to get it up. It's an eyesore. It's absolutely hideous. What it's done to the people of the Hook Close area is blighted their lives. It's devalued their properties, and yet the developer continues to say, oh, it's only a pencil height. That's the only difference. A pencil height to these residents is quite significant, because yet again it's an attack on their lives, on their residences, etc. And it shows just a complete and utter disregard for the people and for this council. And for the NNC to have supported this all the way through is disgraceful. I certainly wouldn't support it.
Granting this application, it's not endorsing the original application. We've got to be very clear that the applicant already has planning permission in place.
Yes, sure, I am aware.
So a proposal has been moved and seconded, so we can debate on that before? So a proposal has been moved to defer and seconded. Do we need to take a vote on it?
We need to be debated, so if anybody else...
So does anybody else have anything to say on that before we go to the vote on whether we do? No? So we move to the vote. Just to be clear, the amendment is to defer the application until... It's currently listed for November, and it doesn't mean to say that it will go ahead in November, but yeah. So to be clear, then the proposal on the table now is to defer this application until after the court case, and you're seconded that. So all those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Therefore, this application has been deferred. Thank you. That takes us on to the second agenda item, application to be considered this evening, which is NE/23/00858/ land south of Wood Lodge Farm, Huntingdon Road in Thrapston. And we have 3 speakers again on this application. Sorry, yeah, after, of course, the officer's spoken. So we have Jonathan. Don't feel you're going to update us on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this application reference NE/23/00858 full relates to land south of Wood Lodge Farm, Huntingdon Road, Thrapston, and the application comprises the erection of a 49.9 megawatt output solar farm featuring ground-mounted solar PV panels and all associated infrastructure for a temporary period of 50 years, following which the development would be removed from the site. The site area measures 59.34 hectares, approximately 0.6 square kilometres, and in layman's term, that equates to something around 80 football pitches, to give some form of context for members. The application is cross-boundary, with the entirety of the proposed site access situated within Huntingdonshire District Council's administrative boundary. However, all built works are situated within North Northamptonshire. The officer recommendation to committee is to grant permission, and I will summarise the reasons for this assessment later in the presentation. The application is being presented to committee as a result of the number of public objections received and the objection of the parish council. The update sheet issued to members summarises additional consultation comments received by the council following publication of the officer report. This includes submissions made by a resident of a neighbouring property who has raised concerns as to land ownership of the site access, routing and the construction impacts of the development. An officer response to these comments is set out alongside some additional context in relation to the assessment of cumulative impacts of the development when viewed alongside other ongoing planning applications within the wider area. The update report also includes a full list of recommended conditions to be attached to any grant of consent, given minor changes to condition wording and formatting that have been recommended by the Council's legal services following their review. In this respect, it's highlighted to members that no additional requirements have been added and no conditions omitted through these minor updates from the initial version published. So I will move through the slides to give you some context. So first off, this plan just shows the broad location of the site in relation to the wider local area. So we've got the site area highlighted there just north of the A14, Thrapston approximately 1.5 kilometres to the west of the site, and the village of Titchmarsh around 1.2 kilometres to the northwest. The next slide shows the site location plan for the proposed development. So we've got the main area of the development shown in the red line there, with the site access that crosses into Huntingtonshire evident to the southeast section. So you can see that linear access track running away to the side there. This plan also shows the blue line ownership boundary of the applicant, which is relevant to the ecological matters, which I will cover later on. This slide just shows another aerial context taken from Google Earth to give a bit more of an impression of what we're looking at in terms of site area. So we've got the red line boundary roughly indicated on the site area there, the A14 running to the south, and this just gives some perspective as to the size of the application site. So you've got essentially 3 field parcels of arable land that the development would be sited upon. This slide shows the proposed site layout plan for the development. So you can see essentially the arrays of solar panels positioned across the 3 fields there. You'll also note some sections of those fields excluded from the proposed development. So if I can highlight those with the mouse. Hopefully you can see that. We can't. So section to the north and to the middle there excluded as a result of high archaeological potential identified in these areas, so the development limited to the remainder of those fields. This is the proposed landscaping plan for the development, so again just showing the proposed layout there and the landscaping features as existing and proposed to go alongside the development. This slide just highlights some of the details we've got in terms of what's being proposed. So to the top left corner there, you've got a section of a proposed solar panel, just to give an indicative idea of what that looks like. They're at 3.1 metres in height, the top of that solar panel there. And then we've got some other details, the stock fencing that's proposed to surround the perimeter of the site, the smaller inverter cabinets that are required alongside the solar panels. And to the bottom of the slide there, we've got some impressions of the infrastructure that's required for the grid connection. So we've got the typical electric infrastructure adjacent to the pylon. If I go back briefly, just to highlight, you've got the grid connection point to the northeast corner of the site there. This plan shows it better, in fact, to the northeast corner. You've got the, yeah, that's perfect, thank you. So that's a grid connection point. You've got the existing pylon running through there. So going back to this, that's where that infrastructure is proposed. And alongside that, a communications tower as well, which I understand is approximately 15 metres in height in the context of the adjacent pylon there. So then I've just included a few site images just to give an impression of the site area as it is as existing. So you've got, as I mentioned earlier, 3 arable field parcels. This view looking west at the site. The field in the foreground there is not part of the development site. The actual area that would be developed upon to the western edge of the development is visible beyond the tree line there, just that sloping, gradually sloping hillside. The next images illustrate the site area from the south. So this is a small, taken from a spur off the A14, some images looking north across the site area there. So this is the middle field parcel of the site. These ones looking to the south. So this image taken from the farm access itself, just looking across south towards the site. Again, the field in the foreground does not form part of the development site, is the field beyond that, just to give some impression of the views from the surrounding area. And then finally, this view taken from the closest lay-by on the A14, looking broadly northwest at the site. Again, only a glimpsed view possible from this context. The site not being the field in the foreground, but the small element on the horizon that is just visible there. So I'll now briefly run through the key points of assessment for the application. And I'll go back to the site location plan for ease of reference. So in terms of planning assessment, officers have balanced the benefits of the development against identified harms. The proposal would result in the loss of an area of approximately 9.4 hectares of grade 3A best and most versatile agricultural land, around 14% of the total site area, the remainder classified as grade 3B, falling below the BMV classification. In this respect, it is, however, noted that the site would be returned to arable fields in terms of use at the end of the development period of 50 years. In addition, the proposed development is assessed to result in a degree of material harm in landscape and visual terms, given it would introduce a form of development upon a currently open rural landscape. Whilst existing and proposed landscaping and screening would act to limit the visual prominence of the solar arrays, which stand at approximately 3.1 metres tall, it is the case that some views from surrounding aspects would be impacted by the development, as set out within the submitted landscape and visual impact assessment and relevant sections of the officer report.
Sorry, can I just stop you for a moment? Can you hear Councillor?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I'm sorry. I'm really struggling to concentrate on this with this racket going on behind, and I think it's pretty unfair. I don't know what anyone else thinks, but I really am struggling with this. So either I abstain from this and leave, or we have to do something. We can't have this racket going on whilst we're trying to run a meeting here.
I agree, and I'm going to send an email, but can you hear? Can everyone hear clearly? I do want to make sure that everyone can hear the officer. Can you carry on? Sorry to stop you, but I did just want to make sure everyone
No,
could
no
hear
problem
with
at
us
all.
going in the
As long as everyone can hear me okay, and obviously more than happy to reiterate any points as required. So, yeah, just picking up where I left off there, in terms of landscape and visual impact, this factor overall is assessed by officers as presenting moderate to significant weight against the proposed development in the planning balance overall. Against this, the development is likely to achieve a substantial enhancement in overall biodiversity value across the site area via the replacement of arable cropland with grass and meadow lying below the sought solar arrays. Importantly, there is clear support in planning policy terms at a national level for renewable development of this form, and information submitted in support of the application suggests that the 49.9 megawatt output of the development would offset approximately 21,500 tonnes of CO2 per annum, or just over 1 million tonnes over the lifetime of the scheme, providing power to the equivalent of 15,000 homes. This benefit of the development is assessed in planning terms as providing very substantial weight in favour of the proposal. Overall, therefore, is the view of officers that the identified benefits of the scheme would outweigh its harms, such that the planning consent should be granted subject to the recommended conditions as set out in full within the update report issued to members. Turning to other matters, officers assess that the proposal would be acceptable in transport and highways terms, given input from Northants Transport and Highways, National Highways and Cambridgeshire County Council Highways that raised no objection to the proposal, subject to proposed conditions in relation to the submission of a construction traffic management plan and appropriate access measures. In this regard, it is reiterated that as a cross-boundary application, the development's road access onto the local highway network is situated within Huntingdonshire. Huntingdonshire District Council have reaffirmed that a separate planning application for the proposed access route will need to be submitted for them for assessment, and it's highlighted that consent for this section of the site will need to be agreed with Huntingdonshire before the development is implemented. In terms of residential amenity, the most significant impacts of the development on adjacent residential properties are assessed to arise during the temporary construction period as a result of noise, disturbance and additional vehicle movements. However, once operational, these impacts will very substantially reduce, and the submission of a construction traffic management plan, as secured via condition, aims to ensure that any significant harms to amenity are mitigated during the construction period. The development is not assessed to result in the generation of material harm upon the special historic significance of any heritage assets, given its location, and no issues have arisen in terms of glint and glare, fire safety or land contamination. Furthermore, whilst a small section of the site is identified as higher flood risk, Both the lead local flood authority and Environment Agency have indicated no objection to the proposals, given measures taken to avoid harmful flood implications. In terms of ecological impacts, a number of supporting reports and survey details have been submitted, whilst further information is to be secured via condition, including a construction and environmental management plan and updated landscape and ecological management plan. The most significant element of this consideration is the potential implications of the development on the nearby Upper Nene Valley Gravel Pit Special Protection Area and Ramsar site, as set out in detail within the officer report. A habitats regulations assessment has been carried out as recommended by the statutory nature conservation body, Natural England in this case, and the proposed mitigation to be secured against the application has been deemed to avoid the generation of harmful impact upon the integrity of this nearby protected habitat in the view of Natural England. To summarise, therefore, officers assess that in view of all material planning considerations, the merits of the application outweigh its harms in this instance, and therefore recommend that permission is granted for the temporary period as sought, subject to the proposed conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just confirm that all members were able to hear the officer give his report, present his report? Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it can hear very well presented, actually, I thought, but it is very hard to actually concentrate on the finer details with the music playing in the background.
Thank you. We have 3 speakers on this, and the first speaker is Julia Fletcher, third-party objector. If you'd like to take a seat, and you have 3 minutes, and I do apologise for this noise. It's not helpful, I know.
The Habitats Regulation Assessment is woefully sparse and does not meet the Habitat Directive's requirement, and it cannot pass the HRA integrity test as stated. Only stage 1 and 2 have been briefly considered, and where the Modesty judgment states that all aspects of a plan which can affect the site's conservation objectives must be identified in the light of best scientific knowledge in the field, and the cumulative impact of the proposed warehouses have been completely ignored. Natural England state that NNC as the competent body need to be certain beyond reasonable doubt that the plan will not have an adverse effect on the Spa and the Ramsar, and where doubt remains, a project must not be authorised. And in Natural England's commissioning report, it makes clear that it is not for the decision makers to consider the likely and reasonable foreseeable effects and to ascertain that the proposal will not have an adverse effect on the site before it may be granted permission. There is insufficient information to ascertain that there would not be an adverse effect on the integrity of the site. Authorisation has to be denied. Natural England have confirmed that newly submitted evidence over 3 years confirms that the development has been proven as functionally linked. Mitigation requirements and/or a further wintering bird survey will not change that fact. As the land is functionally linked, then conditions need to be considered, including the precautionary principle, and this has not been applied. The land proposed for mitigation is already used by Golden Plover, so it cannot be used to mitigate its losses. The proposed mitigation is not clear in the application. It doesn't state where the sites will be, how large they will be, or clarify how the land will be managed. The committee's recommendation states that despite the mitigation of proposal will generate moderate to significant harm to the landscape and the visual landscape of large undeveloped rural landscape, and no visuals of solar panels at all have been presented. The impact on listed buildings and the homes in the area have also been undervalued. The Council's own report states the land is of the highest sensitivity to very large scale solar. The land is indeed best and most versatile land, and there's been significant downgrading of the wetness criteria, which is a common practice for the solar applications. Grade 3B soils are only marginal, and actually if it was grade 2 it would be classed as grade 3A or even grade 2 soil. It is not necessary for this harm to occur to meet the planning guidance on renewable energy. Solar panels should not be on good agricultural land, and the NNC has already numerous renewable energy sites throughout the county. Flooding is not low risk but high, and it's occurred 6 times in Pollapit, and in fact it was flooded today and the roads were all closed. Construction traffic numbers are also very small compared to any comparable site of this size. There is no grid connection possible yet, which is why Brigstock and other solar farms have not been yet constructed. And we have no idea of the number of solar panels actually involved, and therefore how big the site actually is and whether it's in your remit. The application is not a state ready for consideration by the Planning Committee, and this application cannot be determined at this time.
Your 3 minutes is up. Would you mind just staying there if members have any questions for clarification? Councillor Buckingham.
For clarification, because I couldn't gauge from the maps exactly where it is. So in relation to the Old Winkle Lakes and...
Councillor Buckingham, that would be a question for officers later.
Sorry.
It's just questions of clarification from the speakers, from something they've said, not actually the application itself.
It is visible for many villages around.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sylvia Presswich from Titchmarsh Parish Council. Again, Sylvia, when you have 3 minutes, when you're ready.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Sylvia Prestwich, the current chair of Titchmarsh Parish Council, and I am confirming and endorsing the Parish Council's objection to this application. The Parish Council have already detailed our objection at length, pointing out the contravention of many of your own policies in the North Northamptonshire Joint Core Strategy, the National Planning Policy Framework, and the local plan. All of these breaches should surely have raised red flags to your officers, leading them to recommend refusal. Sadly, I see that their recommendation to you is to accept. I hope I can convince you otherwise. The primary objection of Titchmarsh Parish Council is the loss of prime agricultural land should the solar farm be approved. The majority of land covered by this huge solar farm is prime, best and most valuable land, grade 3A, with some grade 3B. We need to preserve our best agricultural land to grow food to feed our ever-increasing population. There are much more appropriate places to site solar farms. This application is one of 2 current solar farm applications in our village, both with a capacity of 49.99 megawatts. These 2 proposed developments are very close, just 215 metres apart at the nearest points, and will be viewed as a huge solar farm covering 134 hectares. That's 331 acres, equivalent to 163 football fields. That's very big. The visual impact of this solar farm, which would be doubled if the other solar farm application is granted, will be considerable and will be easily seen from all around, including neighbouring villages. The panels will be higher than the hedges and will totally spoil our rural countryside. Solar farms are best sited on poor land, brownfield sites, or on warehouses' roofs. The applicant states that this is a temporary project over 50 years. Hardly temporary, is it? If this application is granted, the result will be a loss of wildlife habitats, including that of our protected species of golden plover and lapwing. Also, the proximity of this site to the local Ramspa and Special Protection Area is a great concern. This application is one of 4 huge commercial applications surrounding our village, all of which are a threat to our rural Northamptonshire. There's a high risk of the whole area being taken over, losing completely the rural feel of Titchmarsh, which will disappear as we found ourselves in the middle of a commercial and industrial development.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes is up. Thank you. Would you mind staying there just in case any councillors have any questions of clarification from you? No? No, thank you very much. And finally on this application we have Peter Grubb, the agent on behalf of the applicant. Thank you. And again, you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Peter Grubb. I'm a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute, a qualified expert witness and a specialist in energy development. On Monday this week, the last coal-fired power station, Radcliffe-on-Soar, was closed, taking another 1,200 megawatts of power off the grid at a time when electricity demand is rising and is set to double by 2050. We've also seen more extreme weather across the Midlands in the last week, with flash floods shutting major roads, schools, businesses, and causing significant damage. We continue to see global conflicts inflating our energy bills. The need to address climate change and generate more clean, homegrown energy is now declared by government to be a critical national priority. This council has also declared a climate emergency. This proposed solar farm will add 49.9 megawatts of homegrown green power to the grid. That's enough to power 15,000 homes and offset 21 kilotons of CO2 every year. Importantly, though, successfully tackling climate change and meeting growing energy demands without fossil fuels doesn't need to be at the expense of nature recovery and farming. This proposal is very well planned and sits not in a protected landscape, but in the A14 corridor, and it will work alongside nature recovery and farming. The biodiversity net gain target for development is 10%. This scheme achieves 138% biodiversity net gain. As directed by government, we have chosen poorer agricultural land. This is not prime BMV that has been suggested. 86% is lower grade, and there is absolutely no grade 1 or grade 2 land involved. We have chosen the poorer land, and we intend to graze sheep around the panels to ensure there's a continued agricultural output. And of course, the site will be returned to agriculture at the end of its life in 50 years. In terms of the construction process, this has been carefully planned in consultation with Highways. Construction deliveries will be just 6 weeks and strictly controlled by condition. We've also chosen a route that avoids local villages. I also just want to talk briefly about the habitat regulation assessment, which has been mentioned. I just want to confirm Natural England have been involved in the application process throughout and have confirmed in writing that the habitat regulation assessment is acceptable and has been passed. The Secretary of State has also commented on the application in the context of the EIA screening direction and has confirmed there is no likely significant effect on the environment, which is the test for passing the HRA. Finally, I would just stress that the proposed warehouses and the proposed Elgin solar farm have been fully assessed by officers in combination with this scheme, which is in the report, and there is no unacceptable cumulative impact. Perhaps more importantly, cumulative impact does not actually apply to a development unless it is consented or built, and none of those projects are consented or built. So those projects are not technically relevant to this application.
Thank you very much. Your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you
Would
very
you
much.
mind just staying there in case councillors have any questions of clarification? No? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I thank all speakers? Thank you. Councillors will have noted the update sheet and the conditions that are Appendix A to the update sheet. So before we debate this application, NE/23/00858/full land south of Woodlodge Farm, Huntingdon Road, Thrapston. For the purposes of debate and in accordance with the Council's Constitution Rules 19.2 and 19.21, I will move the recommendation stated on page 64 and 110 of your agenda papers that planning permission be granted subject to conditions as set out in the report, and those conditions are Appendix A on the update sheet. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Best, thank you. So I open the floor for debate. Councillor Best.
Yeah, it's a technical question which maybe Development Services might be able to answer. What is the significance of the 50 megawatt limit that this seems to be just under? Why is it at 49.99, and what difference would it make if it were over that, out of curiosity?
Yeah, a valid question. Local authorities quite often see solar farms of this scale being proposed. Normally the reason for that is a solar farm of over 50 megawatt output is classified as nationally significant infrastructure and therefore is subject to a different determination process. I believe it has to go in front of the Secretary of State, schemes of that size, before they're determined, which can be a very lengthy and complex process as I understand it. So generally this is the maximum that a local authority can deal with.
Okay, and one of our speakers mentioned that there was a second solar farm planned, although I guess we haven't seen the application yet. Do we know if that is to be adjacent to this one or adjoining it anyway, or is it going to be quite separate?
So the land is probably visible to some extent on this plan on screen. It's I think it's set out in the report the distance from the site. It's in the realm of hundreds of metres away. So it's not directly adjacent, but it could be classed as being within the locality. And certainly within the locality of Titchmarsh, it's closer than this scheme, in fact. So it's essentially the farm to the north, separated by a few hundred metres.
Yeah, thanks. My concern, I mean, that's concern, but my concern was that it was one very big farm which had just been conveniently split into two to get under some planning hurdles. But okay, thanks.
It is quite close. It is quite close. But the other application, which hasn't come to us yet, is closer to Titchmarsh than this. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you. So going back to my first question, I do know the area around this, and I know that it's very close to the area which is of special scientific interest, as well as some of the things that you've mentioned about the heritage. So this area is very heavy in heritage, being along that Neen Valley. Sorry, but I can't get a gauge where it actually is. So where is the A605 that goes along the bottom there between Aldwinkle and Titchmarsh, as opposed to this site?
Can you see the arrow, Councillor Buckingham? It's just
I can see. So that's the 605. Okay, so you've got the lakes to the other side, or what was called the Neen Valley Gravel Pits area. Okay, thank you very much for that clarification.
Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It does look like loss of amenity and also overdevelopment. It looks like the transformation of a rural area into a more industrial urban area. And to state it's only for 50 years strikes me as disingenuous.
I must admit, 50 years to me doesn't sound very temporary, but yeah, we won't be here. I did have concerns about the habitat, but going on to 2.4, the EIA screening opinion, the screening direction was sought from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government by the applicant, which subsequently determined that the Secretary of State does not consider the proposal is likely to have significant effects on the environment. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Before I make a comment, can I just ask the planning officer, the access to this, is it coming directly off the, to my understanding, is it coming directly off the A14, not through a proper junction, but actually off like a little slip road and down that narrow road?
It's in Cambridgeshire, but I'll let the... Can you move your microphone closer as well? Thank you. I'll let the officer answer that because you can show it on the map.
Yeah, so it's not directly off the A14. It is a small road, I believe it's called Tollbar Lane, within Huntingdonshire, that it's accessed via. What it is worth noting, though, I suppose, is the lack of objection from the relevant highway authorities. They're satisfied that the access is safe and suitable for the purposes of construction and the much lesser vehicle movements when it's operational.
Okay, thank you. Personally, I can't support this, to be honest. I completely agree with the chair of Titchmarsh Council. I think lorries on rural roads are a big no-no for a start-off, if I've got where it is in my head correct. I think there will be devastation to the wildlife habitat, which will be probably irreparable. And personally, my own personal view on this is fields are for agriculture and farming purposes. We should be lobbying central government to make it planning law that solar panels are fitted on commercial and industrial buildings and also on domestic dwellings over a certain size and value. So I just think we're compromising our food security here, and I honestly, apart from the devastation to the rural communities, I can't agree with this at all, Chair, sorry.
Thank you. Can I ask the planning officer wants to come in?
Yes, members, I just wanted to put this application into context, into the wider economy. I'm being non-partisan here in terms of just reporting facts. The Labour manifesto does talk about, it states, the green energy transition. So in terms of where planning policy, as soon as the government came in, a number of these solar panel applications were approved. So we are going to transition away from other energies. So we are looking at green energy. We're going to get more of these applications within our area. We already have a national infrastructure application that is likely to be submitted in February next year. We've been at the moment we've got pre-planning applications, and that's being spread to the west, to Milton Keynes and to our own council area. So we are going to see more of these in the rural areas rather than less. So I just want to put that into perspective. We all want clean green energy. We have to put it somewhere. And that's going to be the challenge for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I must admit, I have concerns regarding the government's revisions to the National Planning Policy Framework. But Councillor Marks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Loss of amenity and also overdevelopment, and of course, as Councillor Buckingham has pointed out, the threat to the local environment, and as has been pointed out by Titchmarsh, the threat to a society of special scientific interest not so far away, and to wildlife. All of these things are material planning considerations. With the greatest respect, a party political manifesto is not a material planning consideration. People of several different political parties have already spoken, and planning is a non-political matter. Where solar panels are going to be sited is for another day. This is a specific application, which is a loss of amenity and is overdevelopment. That's all that need concern us.
Thank you. I don't think the officer wasn't trying to be party political at all. She was just pointing out the fact that there is, it has gone out for consultation, and I do know one of the first things the new government did when they came in was to grant solar application. Anyway, I do agree we're supporting this. We're discussing this application in front of us, not anything else. Councillor Best.
Yeah, sorry, I just feel I need to counter that because, and I think the officer said in his presentation, is this ideal? No, it's not. If I lived anywhere near it, would I like it? No, I would not. But there is a climate emergency, and there is a great sense of urgency around creating our own green energy. And it won't be painless, and it will always be a compromise. But I think the summary that the officer gave is, on balance, the benefit outweighs the harm here. And for those of you who are close to it, I can understand you won't share that sentiment. But for me, that is important.
Thank you. Can I just ask the officer to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit of further context to what the officer previously said, which are all valid considerations, and I think the concerns raised by members as well are absolutely as stated material considerations that form part of the overall planning balance. I just wanted to reiterate that aside from the emerging direction of national policy, there's already a pretty clear stance set out in the MPPF, that development of this form should be considered acceptable, where the impacts of it aren't so severe that they outweigh those clear benefits. So just in terms of the planning balance facing members, it's important to consider the very significant weight that should be attributed to existing policy in support of development of this type, weighed against those impacts that have been identified.
So I've got Councillor Jelly first and then Councillor Buckingham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not very happy with this application. With this one and the other one that the Chair of the Parish Council said, 331 acres of prime land which is being taken up. You know, we need 331 acres to grow food that we can eat, wheat and barley and stuff like that. My son-in-law's a farmer. That's twice the size of his farm that they're going to take away. And it's all very well grazing sheep on there, but you still need land to grow corn and wheat and barley and everything like that. So I can't support this application, I'm afraid. I'm not very happy with it at all.
Thank you. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you very much. And it goes back to old planning law where you took green belt land for housing. And I think we're faced with that same argument, you know, as to what we should be directing. I agree with renewables. You know, that is the way forward. But taking away agricultural land in respect of it, again, doesn't sit right. On top of roofs and things like that, where I know you don't get the scale of economy, but, you know, it's one of those things that is such a fine balance that, you know, do you come down in favour of one or the other? It's a difficult decision to make.
I agree, it's a very difficult decision. It is finely balanced. I don't think any of us would choose to put solar panels on anywhere rural, but then we've got the NPPF to look at, so, and consider as when we're considering applications. Are there any further comments from councillors? No. Therefore, we'll go to the vote. We have a proposer and seconder. I do want to add, if this application is carried, I'm not saying it will be, but if it is, I do want to add something to the conditions. Just find what I've put. As part of the discharge of the conditions, I'd like those discharged in consultation with the chair of the planning committee. Can we add those? Yep. So.
Sorry, just clarify. That won't be added to the wording of the condition, but they can give that.
Yeah. Can you just give the just so to officers really, if this application is carried, can you give your assurance that the discharge of those conditions, particularly in regard to the let me get the wording, the actual condition itself. It was condition 8 with
I think that's the landscaping
one that they're discharged in consultation with the chair of the planning committee. Thank you.
Yeah, I think officers can agree to that.
So we'll take a vote on this application. On the table, just so we're clear what we're voting on, that planning permission be granted subject to conditions that's set out in the report. All those in favour? 3. All those against? Any abstentions? 1. Thanks. So, thank you. That this application has been refused.
No,
We do
sorry.
need. No, sorry.
The officer recommendation hasn't carried.
Sorry.
There needs to be a proposal and a seconder for the refusal of the application with
Right.
reasons.
Sorry. Yes, I've just been. Yeah. So that means the officer's recommendation has not been carried, but we do have to have a proposer and a seconder to refuse the application with reasons for that. And I suggest they were the habitat, ecological. So can I have a proposer? Councillor Marks? Can we have reasons? Would it be helpful, or could we?
They must give reasons for the reason for refusal.
Right, apparently must give reasons.
Loss of amenity, overdevelopment, threat to wildlife.
Loss of amenity.
Overdevelopment and threat to wildlife.
I think, can I just ask, Clara, I think too many reasons weakens the refusal. I think we need to.
I don't think it matters the number of reasons, but I think the reasons need to be very detailed.
Yeah.
So on the
Yes.
email that I sent to you about what you say when you do that.
I've got it here.
Sorry, yeah, Jonathan.
John, yeah, would you like to come in?
Yeah, just to touch on that, I think just so members are clear in terms of if those reasons for refusal are pursued, for the reasons of the decision, I think it needs to be very clear in terms of the conflict with policy being identified in those terms, and the planning balance exercise summarised and set out in terms of why those factors are considered to outweigh the identified benefits of the development.
Thank you. So, therefore, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking of the wording, and I have got, so planning permission be refused on the grounds of, you said, over. So, yeah. So, did you want to?
I know we're just talking through the points put down. So we've got loss of amenity down. I think for officers to be able to develop anything from that, it would need to know specifically what type of amenity,
yeah,
how that amenity is balanced against the benefits of the proposal. we need to be quite specific. So amenity, you know, what do you mean by amenity? In terms of overdevelopment, what about this scheme is overdevelopment? And then in terms of wildlife, kind of specifically in terms of the wildlife.
I think ecologically and the habitat, and there is golden plover. I am going to make put a motion on the table that the meeting be adjourned for 15 minutes for officers to assist the chair to formulate an alternative motion. So do I have a seconder for that? Thank you. All those in favour to adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes to formulate some words? Thank you. So the meeting's adjourned for 15 minutes. Thank you for that adjournment. We'll restart the meeting. Can I just confirm that when you've restarted? Thank you. Can I also confirm that Councillor Deering has left the meeting? Thank you. So, thank you for that and your patience. For transparency, the Council's planning protocol, which is within the Northamptonshire Constitution, states at paragraph 20.8 that if in moving contrary to the advice and/or recommendation in an officer's report, members require further advice about the details of the motion, the meeting can be adjourned for a short time to allow members and officers to draft the motion. This can include reasons for the decision which are relevant to the planning considerations on the application and which are capable of being supported and substantiated should an appeal be lodged. As Chair, I've consulted with officers and provided a reason for refusal, and they have assisted with drafting of the motion. I propose that planning permission be refused on the ground of harm to the residential amenity. Members also mentioned overdevelopment and threats to wildlife, and I strongly invite members to amend my proposal during the debate to elaborate on and include further reasons for refusal. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jelly. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you. So I think.
Have you just voted on the refusal? You should be opening it up for debate after the seconder. You should have.
Yes. So to do debate, yeah. So I've got a seconder. Yes, sorry, we should have debated before that. I was against and then debating. So we've got a proposer and a seconder. So I open that up for debate and for members to elaborate on those reasons and give me other reasons. I know we do need to elaborate on those reasons and give more detail. I think during the earlier debate, members did discuss agricultural land. I think that's 14% of good agricultural land. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, so just to summarise the situation, the identified loss of best and most valuable land, class 3A, is around 14% of the total development, the remainder of it being class 3B, which is not classed as best and most versatile.
Thank you. I think that is another reason to refuse this application. Members spoke about overdevelopment and threats to wildlife. Should we take those individually and discuss those? So, overdevelopment, what do we mean by overdevelopment? I think part of it is the agricultural land. A good part of that is the development on agricultural land. Councillor Marks?
Yes, Madam Chairman, it does seem to be transforming a village and rural environment into a power generating environment, which is fundamentally transforming the nature of the area. The counter argument to that is that it's temporary, but I don't recognise 50 years as temporary. Perhaps that's my age. Perhaps a very young person would see 50 years as temporary. I don't know, but I don't see it as temporary.
There are... Anybody else? Councillor, no? Can I ask officers' advice? Do you feel that's a strong enough reason for overdevelopment?
It's a tricky one. I do feel it needs to be substantiated in some way. I feel the gist of what the member was describing there was along the lines of concerns regarding the visual impact of the development on the rural landscape. Correct me if that's not an accurate characterisation.
I have concerns on the visibility on the rural landscape, and I think that's what you were talking about, really, is it, just now?
Yes, indeed, Madam Chairman. But of course, there's also the use of the land. I mean, obviously sheep will still walk there, we're told, at least a little bit of the land, but very difficult for humans, horses, dogs and so forth.
There is a footpath, am I right, alongside, which will still be accessible?
Yeah, I can comment on that briefly. So obviously the site is private land as existing. It's a farm. As mentioned, there is potential for livestock uses to continue on the site. That's not ruled out as a result of the development. At the same time, you've got the public right-of-way that runs through the site. That wouldn't be lost as a result of the development. That would be retained for the use of the public.
Members also spoke about damage to the wildlife in the earlier. So I think there will be loss of some habitat and damage to habitat. There are a number of bird species, and the proximity to the Upper Nen Valley gravel pits, special protection area. I need some help here. Councillor Best.
With respect, it feels like you're all scratching around for good reasons, and I understand why. But at the end of the day, unless you can find something which either the planning officers failed to consider in their report or got wrong in their report, it doesn't feel like you've got anything material here to me.
Thank you. There are concerns, and I've got concerns, but some of them have been addressed in the report.
Chair, could I briefly comment on the wildlife side of things? So I think it's probably worthwhile just sort of re-summarising where we are in that respect in regards of members' concerns. So important things to note, as referenced earlier. Firstly, the identified biodiversity net gain that would result from the development set out at over 100%. That's a pretty significant ecological enhancement in the biodiversity value of the site. Alongside that, it's very important to consider the various ecological considerations that have gone into the remainder of the assessment. So the various surveys that have taken place, the inputs we've taken from the key statutory body, which is Natural England, who have stated they don't view the proposal, subject to the mitigation that will be secured, will result in harm to the protected habitat. And the other measures, in officers' view, are such that the ecological characteristics of the site would be preserved.
Councillor Marks and then Councillor Buckingham.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I can understand a biodiversity net gain if we're talking about a brownfield site. But as far as I'm aware, this is a greenfield site. So, I mean, I looked through the papers and it seemed to be odd. They were counting as gain land that was already rural. I mean, it was something like 130% net gain or something. It was
I think if you look at 2.3, it does talk about the biodiversity enhancements and screening works, which include wildlife and native hedgerow planting.
So yeah, just to comment on that briefly, it's a fair point that normally it's easier to achieve biodiversity net gain if you start off with a low standard, perhaps a brownfield site, for example. In this case, it is important to remember, though, biodiversity as a characteristic is dependent on the nature of the species that are present on the site. So despite this site being greenfield and undoubtedly of biodiversity value, the majority of the site is arable farmland, which means if you break that down as a biodiversity assessment does into individual, say, plant species, for instance, the actual value of the site is comparably quite low, given you're growing crops on it, which is essentially a monoculture. Alongside that, obviously, you've got hedgerow, boundary areas, which have been included in the assessment, but the provision of sort of wildflower planting on the site, with this richness of species that potentially introduces, that's where that large net gain figure arises from.
Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you. some of the species that they've already talked about, the golden plover, the wetlands,
and lapwing.
yeah, and gadwalls. There are lots of species there that you won't know what the impact of that migration and what will happen. There's still very much an unknown, as it were. So you can't gauge that impact on returning species, and that there are a lot of species that will come back throughout the years, summer migration, winter migration, wetlands. This is an area of scientific special interest, as well as the heritage, and that habitat that may have an impact on.
Yeah, so I can advise members a bit further on that again as well. So to start with, if we start from the top, I suppose officers say that those the absolutely relevant considerations in terms of protected species using the site in association with the special protection area, that has been considered as part of the application. And the key takeaway from that is that the statutory nature conservation body, Natural England, has issued a view that subject to the mitigation that's proposed to be secured by the permission, would avoid harm to the integrity of that protected habitat and thus the species that use it. So specifically in terms of lapwing and golden plover, which are identified in Natural England's more recent consultation responses to the application based on data they've received, they drew a conclusion from the presence of those species that they view the site is likely to be classified as functionally linked land associated with that protected habitat as a result of those species. As a result of that, they proposed or set out a scheme of mitigation which essentially comprises replacement habitat adjacent to the site to be secured for the lifetime of the development to essentially provide safe habitat for those species that would potentially be offset by the development. If the birds aren't able to nest on the development site, Natural England have said that provided the developer provides this replacement habitat adjacent to the site, they're of the view that there would not be harm arising to that protected habitat, the special protection area.
I do need some help because although... Oh, Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to sound a bit contradictory here because I have now voted against this application twice. And I'm a bit confused as to what's going on here now because we've debated this item, we've voted to refuse it, we then had an incredibly long adjournment whilst yourself and officers came up with suitable wording for why this application would be refused. We voted again to refuse it.
Actually, we had a proposal in a second and we shouldn't have actually
Yes, I know we should have, but you sent it to the vote and we voted. And the applicants, the councils over here that have given their reasons for material application reasons for not accepting this application have got years of experience between them, and I'm confident that they have got the understanding of what a material application, a material reason for refusing the application is. We have refused applications in the past and never had this much scrutiny from officers, and I'm starting to feel a bit browbeaten on this item. The application can be appealed by the applicant.
I think if we're going to refuse something, we do need to have strong reasons to support our refusal, and this is what there are lots of things I don't particularly like in this application, but a lot of the concerns I had have been addressed. Yeah, can I just bring our legal advisor in? to address some of the procedural points. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'd just like to clarify the procedural points that you raised. So the first vote was in relation to the officer recommendation, which was not carried. That doesn't mean that the application is refused. It means that the officer recommendation isn't carried. That leaves the application open to determination in any way, actually. And then after that, the Council's planning protocol, which is found in the Council's constitution, permits an adjournment for officers to assist members with the drafting of the motion. And that's what took place during that adjournment. And from listening to what the Chair had said when we reconvened, the Chair made it clear that there was one reason for refusal in her proposal, with a strong invitation to members to provide additional reasons or provide further information to that reason. And that was an invitation to members. So then there was a proposal on the table. That was then seconded. Usual procedure, as I know you know, but it was just for the sake of clarity and for the recording, is that you have a proposer, a seconder, the item is debated and then voted upon. As you correctly point out, there was a minor error in that a vote was taken, and I believe that was clearly an error and corrected immediately. So from a legal perspective, I'm satisfied that that error was corrected immediately, that vote shouldn't have been taken because there wasn't sufficient time for a debate to take place. My understanding is that now what is happening is that there is a debate on this particular proposal for refusal, and when members reach a point where they feel able to vote, members may then choose to either vote to refuse, and they need to provide reasons for that refusal. And I understand why you might feel that you're being asked to, or being, I think you used the term browbeaten. I understand why you might feel that, but from a legal perspective, if members don't give adequate reasons for their refusal, that leaves the council open to the risk of a costs award against it. So it's really important, and for officers to understand, because officers can't assist with drafting a reason for refusal if they don't understand what those reasons are. So it's really important that members have the space and time to debate the reasons fully before they come to a vote, and also to set out their reasons in detail so that they can be understood to members of the public, to those, if this decision is appealed, to those making a decision on when or whether that was a valid reason for refusal.
Just to come back then, thank you very much for such a detailed response, and I do appreciate it. But Councillor Marks, Councillor Jelly, they've both given absolutely adequate reasons.
I think they need to be more detailed too. We've said about visual amenity, and I think if I can refer members to paragraph 3.4 on page 66, there are residential properties very close. There's a farmyard complex, which includes a residential dwelling and a number of barns, and certainly and that's directly to the north of the site. And additionally, there are isolated dwellings which lie to the southern edge of the site, which was the reason I originally, if we did approve this application, that I wanted to ensure that officers condition A that consulted with the chair on the. Thank you. Councillor Marks.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, yes, indeed. We're all friends and colleagues here. Officer colleagues included. We're all friends and colleagues here. Yes, I think we can agree that a footpath through an industrial estate and a footpath through the countryside are clear and different things. And the visual aspect of a village, or indeed, as you pointed out, Madam Chairman, the isolated properties would be transformed. I mean, I live in an urban area myself, so I have nothing against urban areas, but this is a fundamental transformation of a rural area into an urban one. And again, of course, as I've already stated, there is a counter-argument that this is only for 50 years. So I think the crux of the matter is, do we or do we not regard 50 years as temporary? And do we believe that at the end of that 50 years, the village of Titmarsh and the area around it, the isolated properties, will be restored to being a rural area.
This is
This
very
is the
much
material
south
consideration of the loss of
Titchmarsh.
amenity. They're changing it from the proposed development is changing the aspect of the area from one thing to another thing.
Can I ask that officers, could you load the map up again so that we could see the actual location? Have you got that? Thank you. And we carry on debating this. Councillor Buckingham?
Yeah. This area is really important to the council as well because it's a tourist area. The greenway that runs through the Nene Valley, although it may be a couple of 100 yards either way.
The greenway doesn't actually run through this application site, I don't believe. The gravel, the area, it is the Nen Valley Way is to the east, no, sorry, west of this. So, have we?
But it has an impact on that visual amenity.
Sorry, yes, Pete, please. Oh, Jonathan, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I can just try and add a bit to that, I think. So, yeah, appreciate where members are coming from in terms of visual amenity, harm to the character of the area, perhaps. I think from an officer's point of view, in terms of refusing the application on that reason, it's important that members understand, I think, that is acknowledged as an impact to the development. That's set out in the overall planning balance, that there would be a degree of harm arising from the proposal because of its visual impact on the surrounding area. In officers' view, that's outweighed by the benefits of the proposal, but in order for members to refuse the application on that basis, I think they would need to clarify that, in their view, that reason for refusal on its own or in combination with potential other reasons would outweigh the benefits of the scheme in the overall planning balance.
The lapwings it's nesting on this site, they're in decline and they've been put on a red list. So therefore, there's another reason why we shouldn't agree for that to go forward.
Thank you. I mean, and that was one of the reasons earlier about the impact on the wildlife. And this site is close to 8 statutory designated sites of nature conservation importance, which includes the Titchmarsh site of special scientific interest and the Upper Nen Valley Gravel Pit Special Protection Area. So I don't know if members want to make reference to that and their concerns in the impact on those areas. Do we have to, can I ask officers' advice, do we need to actually agree the complete wording, or can we agree the reasons and finesse the wording, perhaps the word at a later, after this meeting, outside of this meeting?
I'll briefly comment from an officer point of view, just in terms of, from my point of view, obviously set out the recommendation. I think officers, and I may be incorrect in stating this, I think officers are there obviously to assist. Members have the power of making that decision, and officers can assist in setting out. It's a tricky one because officers can't give the reasons, so for example, simply stating the amenity impact of the development without a grounding in planning policy and without explaining where that amenity impact's arising, who it's impacting upon, that is unlikely to stand up as a reasonable reason for refusal of the application. So that's why that additional detail is required. Obviously, officers can explain the circumstances of the development and how we assess those impacts, but we can't tell members that, for example, that will be the impact of that based on this, this and this. That, as I understand that, members would have to come to that judgment.
Thank you. So at the moment, we don't have that much written down. I think we need to go into a bit more detail, and I'm finding it difficult because every concern I had in relation to this, I found a counter-argument. So it is very finely balanced. It doesn't mean to say we like it. I don't necessarily like it. But we do need to have strong reasons to refuse.
But surely the loss of habitat, the impact that we've discussed tonight, and you know, officers themselves have said yes, there is going to be an impact. We think that, you know, and we're just saying there is going to be an impact. And for us, it outweighs what the officers are telling us. Just as, you know, you're making the counter-argument, so we're almost at stalemate here.
If you look at page 69, National England's advice, and they say that the proposal is not directly connected with or necessary for the management of the European site. So I can put those arguments forward.
Yeah, I'll just say, Chair, just to add that as a plan officers, we're not making a counter-argument as such. We've obviously done the planning balance, the plan assessment, and as professional kind of advisors to members, we're advising on the balancing exercise, and it's for members obviously to then take that advice on board and then do the balancing exercise themselves if they see it balancing a different way. In terms of ecology, I mean, I think Jonathan's pointed out that we've got Natural England as a statutory expert body in wildlife and ecology is saying that the mitigation is acceptable, so that's what we're advising members.
Councillor Best.
Sorry, I feel like I keep repeating myself, but you can't ask the officers to help you come up with the reasons why their recommendation is wrong.
We're not asking officers to. I'm fully aware that officers cannot help us with reasons to refuse this. It's got to come from members.
Yeah.
But we can ask officers advice regarding those reasons, and if they feel they're
And the officers have written a comprehensive report,
Absolutely.
which covers all of the points that have been raised, and on balance finds the benefit to outweigh the harm. And we've come up with nothing that contradicts that.
Well, members have come up with reasons, but not very detailed reasons. And
nothing specific and that hasn't been covered already in the report.
I agree.
Right.
But as well, I'm looking for members for some help with this, because it is a comprehensive report. I looked at traffic. I was a bit concerned about that, but actually it comes in from off the A14. It doesn't go through the village. I did have an issue with visual amenity. I did have a concern regarding wildlife and the biodiversity. But you read what Natural England say, and it's difficult to substantiate. I'm going to summarise in a minute. So Councillor Buckingham, and then I'll try to summarise what we've got.
So if you look at pages 72 and 73, the objections, from statutory consultees, objection, recommend refusal, objection, few references to security and the potential, detailed objection, campaign to protect rural England, Northamptonshire, town and parish councils, Clopton Parish Council object. All these people are objecting, you know, and thank you for your advice, but we have concerns as well, just as much as all these other people. And if they're all saying the same as what we're saying, isn't that a reason enough to say no at this moment in time?
We did, can I just add, we spoke about the agricultural land, and we could add about the national food security to that. Could we, are members be in agreement with that? Councillor Jelly?
Chair, I'm just looking about agricultural land. It says that the world has lost a third of the agricultural land in the last 40 years. And we keep building on the land. We've got loads of houses being built. We're taking agricultural land, greenbelt land, and I'm against this because we're taking more agricultural land.
Chair, all I'd say on that, again, just to say, is just it is a very small proportion of the site is good quality agricultural land, and that, again, is weighed in the planning balance.
Councillor Prentice.
Thanks, Chair. I really am contradicting myself because twice I've actually voted for this application to go through, and I do wish the councillors to my left would come up with some stronger arguments, but we are not here to debate with officers whether this goes through or not.
No.
And that is exactly what we're doing now.
Well,
every time we say something, the councillors here know the procedure for refusal or of an application. And as I said already, this applicant, if they feel they've got grounds to appeal it, they can appeal it. We have debated this to the hills now, and it needs to go to the vote.
We need to be very clear on our reasons for refusal, and I think flesh some of those reasons out, because if this application does go to appeal, you know,
but they have
given
numerous,
and they're not strong reasons. There'll be cost to this council.
But how many different items do you want the councillors to come up with? They've mentioned food, they've mentioned biodiversity, they've mentioned overdevelopment.
Right. Councillors, while we've been debating and discussing this, notes have been taken. So from what I've heard from councillors this evening, that the refusal would be for the impact on the landscape and visual amenity together with harm to the character of the area would outweigh the benefits of the scheme. I mean, can I have some... Would councillors agree with that? The impact of the development on the Upper Nen Valley SPA, including the loss of habitat, would cause harm that would outweigh the benefits of the scheme.
Can I add to that, Chair? If you look at 5.20 in the report, it says the applicant has not provided enough information to adequately demonstrate there will be no impact on great crested newts and or their habitat. As a result of the development being approved, great crested newts have been confirmed as present and potentially suitable terrestrial habitat exists on the site. So I don't have the confidence that they have done enough to actually demonstrate that there won't be a severe impact on great crested newts on this site.
So do you want to add that as a reason? Can I just
make a comment about the newts? On numerous applications when newts are an issue, we consult Nature Space, who are experts on newts. At 5.21 of this report, Nature Space are not objecting to this.
From my understanding, councillors don't like this, but we are struggling to find some really detailed reasons, and we can't ask officers for those reasons. So, and Nature Space didn't object.
If members are saying they want to refuse, I suggest that you say, are these the reasons you want to refuse?
Yeah.
It needs to come to a conclusion. So
I think we need. So
if they want additional reasons.
Can I check with members that the reasons for refusal are that the impact on the landscape and visual amenity together with harm to the character of the area would outweigh the benefits of the scheme? Yes. The impact of the development on the Upper Nen Valley SPA, including the loss of habitat, would cause harm that would outweigh the benefits of the scheme. Are there any other reasons the members would like to add? So, earlier we put when I came back from the adjournment, I put a proposal on the table and suggested that we discuss this further, so detail to flesh out some reasons for refusal and for more detail. So, what I've just read out, we will need an amendment on that. So would somebody like to propose the amendment to the proposal I made earlier?
Just be absolutely clear what they're proposing.
Yep. So, sorry, Councillor Jelly, are you happy?
Which is, can you read
Which
that?
is,
Say that again.
That the application be refused, that planning permission be refused due to the impact on the landscape and visual amenity, together with harm to the character of the area, which would outweigh the benefit of the scheme, and that the impact of the development on the Upper Nen Valley SPA, including the loss of habitat, would cause harm that would outweigh the benefits of the scheme. I can read that again. So, Are you happy to propose then that planning permission be refused on the grounds of impact on the landscape and visual amenity, together with harm to the character of the area, would outweigh the benefits of the scheme, and the impact of the development on the Upper Nen Valley SPA, including the loss of habitat, would cause harm that would outweigh the benefits of the scheme? Yeah.
Chair, can you just clarify really quickly that that's two separate reasons for refusal stated there, just for the record?
Please, do, if you could.
And what he's proposing is an amendment to yours. They're not actually voting on the substantive item. They're voting on the amendment.
Yeah, sorry, I've been away. So you're not actually voting on the substantive item. You're voting on the amendment to the amendment I made earlier. Well, I need to be clear. Perhaps I'll ask legal advice on that.
So at the start of this item, Councillor Brackenbury proposed a motion that planning permission be refused, and the ground for the ground for refusal
was on the grounds of harm to residential
was on the grounds of
amenity.
harm to residential amenity. What I understand is that Councillor Brackenbury is asking for somebody to propose an amendment to that motion, so that it would be that planning permission be refused, so to remove the words for reasons of residential amenity and to substitute that with the wording that she has just read out, which would be that the impact on the landscape and visual amenity together with harm to the character of the area would outweigh the benefits of the scheme, reason 1, and reason 2, the impact of the development on the Upper Nen Valley SPA, including the loss of habitat, would cause harm that would outweigh the benefits of the scheme. So what the Chair is asking is for a proposer and a seconder for that amendment to the proposal. So then you would then have an opportunity to debate that if you want to, and then vote on that amendment. Once you've voted on that amendment, that is what is being still open for debate. You still haven't determined the application. You would still then need to have a vote on the substantive item, which is what you've just agreed to, the amendment. Does that make sense? So I know it's a little bit, because it's coming towards the end of the debate, that's a little bit confusing, but first you have to agree on what the actual proposal is that you're debating on. Once you've agreed that, you can then vote on that, if that makes sense.
So we've got a proposer and do we have a seconder? Councillor Buckingham. Jonathan, you wanted to come
No,
in?
I was just going to say, so
Okay.
just obviously there's never like mini debate after this, but I just need to be clear on reason number 2, what the harm to habitat is. So I don't think that's really been discussed. So as officers, I'd be unclear on what the harm would be.
The loss of habitat?
Chair, point of order, sorry. We're not just about, we're only voting on the amendment now, though. We're not
Yes.
debating the amendment. So
Yeah.
we just need to vote on the amendment.
And just to clarify to the officer, what's being proposed as the reasons for refusal does not include a delegation to officers to draft those reasons for refusal. So there is no, so in terms of clarity, I understand why you would seek clarity when there's a delegation to officers to word that reason. But in this case, there is no delegation to officers sought to provide further reasons. This is just, these are going to be the reasons for refusal. There will be no further input from officers. These will be the reasons, and planning committee, if you agree to that amendment and then you vote and that proposal is approved, then the planning permission will be refused for those 2 reasons. There will be no further input from officers, just to be clear.
Thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconder to amend, Councillor Buckingham, to amend the reasons for refusal. Now that's open. Yeah, can we vote on that? We are voting on the amendment. Yeah. Can I show of hands, please, all those for the amendment that we've just read out?
We're voting to approve the amendment. We're not voting for the amendment.
No.
We're voting to approve the amendment.
Yeah.
Can members be clear, please, whether they're voting for the amendment? Keep your hands up, please. Any against? 2, 3. No, you've just proposed it. Right. So now we can discuss the amendment, and if we want to tighten anything up. So the words were about loss of, it wasn't loss, but maybe we want to add loss of habitat. Oh, right, okay.
So I think you've just probably
Yeah.
need to progress to the vote.
So that amendment's been carried. So now we need to, unless anybody wants to add anything to that, go to the vote. So, no, there's no hands up. Planning permission be refused for reasons of, 1, the impact on the landscape and visual amenity together with harm to the character of the area would outweigh the benefits of the scheme, and that the impact to the development in the Upper Nen Valley SPA, including the loss of habitat, would cause harm that would outweigh the benefits of the scheme. We need a second, I don't we? Yeah. So I need a seconder for that. Councillor Brown. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against? Thank you. The planning permission's been refused. Thank you. Thank you for your patience on this. This takes us on to our third item on the agenda. We are moving towards 10 o'clock. We have a 3-hour cut-off unless members... I've got some wording here. So if we move to the third item, if the meeting hasn't concluded by 10 o'clock, we can, with the councillor's agreement, we can seek a proposer and seconder to continue the meeting in order to complete the order of business. I don't think we're going to complete all of it, but if we start on this agenda item and maybe try to carry the next two or something, depending how quickly this one goes, we debate this one. And as it comes to about 5 to 10, I'll conclude. Are members happy if we... Well, I think, what's the time now? It's 1:45. So the meeting is probably not going to conclude by 10 o'clock. So, Councillor Marks?
Yes, I propose that we try and get the business done tonight so that officers and others don't have to come back and do it all over again.
We can take a vote on this. We don't have to necessarily try to get them all done. I don't know if we are going to get them all done. It depends what time the next application takes. I'd like to try to get at least another couple taken, and maybe as many as possible. But if we... Councillor Prentice would like to speak. Councillor Prentice.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it's not for me to chair the meeting, I'm not trying to, but it does make sense to maybe take the vote now as to whether we're going to continue.
What I'm trying to
Sorry,
do.
I thought you were saying we were going to do it 5 to 10,
No,
at which point we were going to interrupt debate, weren't we?
I did originally, but I thought we'd take the vote now because otherwise you don't want to be halfway through debating an item and then curtail the meeting. So are members happy if I say we'll take the next two items and then review then what time if we whiz through, if they are debated and determined quite quickly, we can then move on to further. Councillor Watts.
Can we not just say we'll do it one by one? Because if this one takes an hour and you say we're going to do two, we're already into...
I was just trying to give some, we can do, I mean, it's up to members. I was just trying to give the applicants that are here some idea. So, can I... Right, so, councillors, subject to North Northamptonshire Council Constitution Part 3.2, Meeting Procedure Rules, Section 10, we have now reached we're close to the meeting guillotine. Therefore, I'd like to seek a proposer and seconder as to whether we continue the meeting in order to complete the order of business. We can debate, we can go through this a number of times so that we could conclude after each application. Do I have a proposer to... So what are you actually proposing, Councillor Marks? Until... So carry on per item, each item. Do I have a seconder for that? All those in favour? Thank you. So we'll debate each item, and then we'll, at the end of each item, we'll vote again. So that takes us on to agenda item, the next application, which is NE/23/01055/full 19 Herne Road, Oundle, Peterborough. And who's taking this? Lisa, you're taking this, aren't you? Thank you.
Yes, okay. This is application NE/23/01055 full, which seeks planning permission for the erection of 42 retirement living apartments and 1 bungalow with associated access, car parking, landscaping, ancillary facilities and associated works at 19 Herne Road, Oundle. There has been a member update on this application, which is in front of you. Following discussion with the council's legal team and the agent for the applicant, we have agreed to include an additional condition should planning permission be forthcoming, just to secure the management and maintenance of the driveway. Also, we have received a letter from Lee Barron MP for Corby and East Northamptonshire, and the letter advises that constituents have been in touch to ask for support for their objections, and the largest concerns are loss of privacy, inadequate highways or parking, and impacts on infrastructure, particularly the NHS. Now, this application is before committee because the officer's recommendation is finely balanced. There have been 10 plus objections, and the Town Council also object. Now, this is a site. Now, as you can see, the site comprises of number 19 Herne Road and land to the rear. Now, the land to the rear is actually associated with number 23 Herne Road, and it is the intention to demolish the dwelling at number 19, the bungalow, and increase the access to the rear of the site, and then build a replacement bungalow, a smaller bungalow, in its place. Now, this development would provide for 42 older persons' homes. There would be 23 two-bed and 19 one-bed. Now, this just provides a little bit more context about where the site is in relation to Oundle itself. As you can see, as the crow flies, it's within 200 to 300 metres of a number of services and is considered to be in a sustainable location. And this is the proposed site plan. Now, the key issues to discuss this evening, members, are the principle of development for older persons' accommodation, and mixed with this is the housing mix and lack of affordable housing provision. If I talk about that quickly first, just before I move on to the slides that will show you the design of the scheme. Paragraph 63 of the MPPF states that housing types need to be of a different size, type and tenure, and this needs to be shown in planning policy, and this includes older people's housing. Now, older persons' housing is defined as housing for retirement age in the MPPF. Policy 11 of the Joint Core Strategy focuses development on the growth towns and the market towns, and Oundle is a market town. Policy 30, which refers to housing mix and tenure, states the need for smaller homes and includes homes for older persons, and this is supported by Policy EN27 of the Local Plan Part 2, which supports older persons' housing and also downsizing. Now, there is a need for 985 older persons' dwellings over the plan period, and there is a shortfall. Just to kind of put it into a date that we can relate to, in 2025, this would be minus 1,202. Now, this 985 figure is not a ceiling for development. So this type of development would be considered to be acceptable numbers-wise. Policy 30 acknowledges affordable housing is required except in exceptional circumstances. Now, in this case, the applicant has submitted a viability assessment, and this has been assessed by an independent consultant for the council, and there is a £27,000 surplus. Now, the £27,000 surplus would be used in a Section 106 for GP services. And in addition to this, the applicant will also contribute to libraries and the monitoring of a travel plan. So in this circumstance, the council have decided that the need for older persons housing outweighs the lack of affordable housing on this site. Now, just going through the design, this is the design of the proposed bungalow, which would be situated towards the front of the site. And that's the floor plan there. Now, this is the design of a substation. Now, the substation itself has raised concern with regards to impact on residential amenity, and the applicant has submitted a noise assessment specifically for this substation. I think if I just try and show you where this substation is in relation to the rest of the site, it's just at the front there, close to the boundary, but the Environmental Protection team have said that that noise assessment is acceptable. Now, this is the proposed elevation that would front Redkite Drive. Now, you can see it's 2.5 stories. The majority of the accommodation is on the first and also the second floor. And that's the north and south elevations as well. And these are the floor plans. So as I said, most of the accommodation is on the ground and also the first floor, and you have some shared services there as well on the first floor. Now, this is the second floor, and facing Redkite Drive, you would just have these dwellings here. And this is a visual of what it would look like once completed. This is a CGI. Now, there have been concerns raised with regards to highways and a lack of parking. It is acknowledged by officers that the scheme is not compliant with regards to parking, and that it offers, I think, almost a 50% reduction. This is not uncommon for this type of development. This is in a highly sustainable location, and the applicant has worked with the highways team. I believe they provided 9 examples of other developments where this type of arrangement has been successful. I also think future occupants of the site would be well aware of the parking situation before occupying the properties. And here are some pictures of the site currently. Now, it's the intention to keep as many of the boundary treatments as possible. That's the bungalow along Herne Road. And that's Redkite Drive. So you can see the trees there, and a landscaping scheme has come forward, and this would also be secured by condition if planning permission were granted by members. So on balance, in this circumstance, the need for older persons housing has been considered to outweigh the requirement for affordable housing. All technical issues have been addressed and overcome. There are no objections from Natural England. A biodiversity enhancement strategy would be secured by a condition. There is no objection from the local flood authority. Even though the site does abut a small portion of the conservation area, there is no objection from the heritage team at the council. So members would recommend that planning permission is granted subject to condition. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 3 speakers on this application. The first speaker is Peter Morton, who's a third party in favour. Would you like to come forward as... Can you just check, Callum, to see if Peter Morton's just gone outside? The gentleman. I don't believe he's here if he didn't sign in. No, thank you. Councillor Ian Clark, and from Oundle Town Council. Thank you. Again, when you're ready, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. My name is Ian Clark. I speak as the Mayor of Oundle on Oundle Town Council's objections to the application. Your officers understandably rest their finely balanced case on recommending planning permission on the need for older persons housing locally. Our clear concerns are well documented in front of you. The on-site substation's been mentioned, parking's been mentioned. Site traffic is a big concern. As a small and old town, our narrow streets have recently suffered with only one route into this site It's already pummeled by heavy traffic for another elderly person site and 60 or more bus movements every day to Prince William School. However, our key concern tonight is infrastructure. Beyond the lack of provision to help mitigate traffic at the marketplace, which we have plans but need help with, paragraph 9.2, your officer suggests some provision of healthcare would be secured with an acceptable Section 106 agreement, and we've heard a number of £27,000 just mentioned. Northants Integrated Commissioning Board, the ICB, will then drip feed that funding into small physical enhancements to the GP surgery, as and when specific numbers of units are built and occupied. Our problem is that Lakeside's Oundle medical practice has already been reconfigured as much as it can. It's been built up as much as it can. The foundation can't take any more, and it can't be expanded outwards as it's run out of room on its curtilage. The present demand for services is formidable. Our recent population growth of over 20% will soon see another 10%, with an additional 260 houses coming on stream very soon, with 65 older person units having broken ground just today, many of which will have probable high medical need. Another 50 or more coming on a third site, squeezing even more into an already overstretched medical practice pot. If you grant planning permission tonight for further older person unit, it feels that that pot will break. Additional premises are needed and in good time, and your planning officers, who may in principle recognise the need, won't see it as their duty to negotiate anything with the ICB. That disconnect between need and what we have leaves us open to a huge but very foreseeable problem further down the line, which can't be in the best interests of your residents. The infrastructure should be in place before planning permission is granted and should not be assumed that it will follow in any event. So should you not decide to not unreasonably refuse planning permission tonight, it might be assumed that the developer will appeal, and that might be an ideal chance to get the infrastructure sorted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you mind just staying put in case the councillors have any questions for clarification? No? Thank you very much. Thank you. Rachel Clare, who's the agent on behalf of the applicant. Thank you. And when you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. So firstly, turning to the principle of development, the site's located within a highly sustainable location within Oundle, which as a market town has a strong role to support growth in housing and jobs. The development of the site for specialist older persons housing is a highly logical use for the site and in accordance with the development plan. In terms of the proposals for the site specifically, the applicant has undertaken significant engagement with officers at pre-application stage and throughout the application. And as a result of this extensive work, there are no technical consultative objections to the proposals. There's a significant and growing need for specialist retirement dwellings within North Northamptonshire, with the population of people aged 65 and over having increased by over 30% in 10 years up to 2021. The need to develop more specialist older persons housing is clearly demonstrable and is covered in detail within your officer's report. In respect of planning obligations, it has been evidenced and independently assessed that the proposals cannot viably support the delivery of affordable housing. National policy acknowledges that planning obligations should not be set at a level to be prohibitive to development coming forward, and the local plan confirms that viability is a consideration to the provision of affordable housing. Section 106 contributions to healthcare, libraries and monitoring of a travel plan will be secured as requested. So moving on to the benefits of the proposals, the key ones are the delivery of 43 specialist older persons homes to meet a significant and growing need within the area. This in turn benefits the wider housing market as people downsize and free up starter and family size homes within the area. The site's in a highly sustainable location, reducing residents' reliance on private vehicles. The schemes of a high quality design that responds sympathetically to the site's context and neighbours, and embraces the local architectural style whilst interpreting this into a contemporary approach. The scheme achieves a high standard of sustainability credentials and includes a highly efficient building fabric, air source heat pumps, solar panels, 100% electric heating, so no gas boilers, mechanical heat recovery, and EV charging to all spaces. Externally, the proposals protect the majority of existing trees and hedgerows on site, creating a high-quality landscape setting for future residents whilst protecting the amenity of existing neighbours. So, to summarise, the proposals will help contribute towards a significant and growing need of housing for the elderly in a highly sustainable location, whilst incorporating a high-quality and sustainable design and protecting and enhancing existing green infrastructure. There are no technical consultative objections from officers, and so I urge you to follow your officer's recommendation to approve the application.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions of clarification? No, thank you very much. Thank you. For the purposes of debate and in accordance with the Council's Constitution Rules 19.2 and 19.21, I'll move the recommendation stated on page 122 and 150 of your agenda papers that planning permission is granted subject to conditions listed in paragraph 11 of the report and subject to the completion of acceptable section 106 agreement which secures appropriate planning obligations, and that B, should an acceptable section 106 agreement securing appropriate planning obligations not be completed by 2nd of December 2024 or any further extension of time agreed in writing between the applicant and the local planning authority, that it be delegated to the Executive Director of Place and Economy to refuse planning permission. With the additional conditions that are in the update sheet, which is I'll just check I've got the right one. The private driveway shall be managed and maintained in perpetuity by the owner of the development, and the reason for that is in the interest of residential amenity and highway safety. So do I have a seconder, please? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shatlock, thank you. I open that up for debate with members. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you. I think I have a number of concerns, and I'm sorry to do that because it's nearly 10 o'clock. However, Oundle is unique for its heritage, its the way that it's grown over the last few years. If you went down Herne Road and where it meets South Road and coming from St Othai's Lane, there's a real, in the morning when you've got 30 odd coaches of school kids, people driving to the school because they want to get to Prince William. There's not enough parking within the town. It's a vibrant market town. But it also has the private school there, which, you know, clogs up the marketplace at times. Not just Prince William School, you've got another Beaumont House, as well as the residents along Herne Close, which is just a normal road. It's not, you know, enlarged because some of these old roads are narrower because they're not. So the highways, the infrastructure, you know, it worries me. And I know that there's not been many accidents along that, but it clogs up something chronic. You can't, you know, there's one road in, one road out of Oundle, and it just, you know, my grandson goes to Prince William School, getting on the buses, and it's just, is it one step too far? Because we've got other developments going on all the way around, because everybody wants to live in a lovely market town. But for the last 30 odd years, there hasn't been sufficient parking. There is literally 100 or so car parking spaces in the middle of the town. My concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I do know Herne Road, and I don't know a single school that doesn't get busy around school time. So, you know, I think there is, and I don't know the number of buses. But I don't think Oundle School itself contributes too much to the busyness in the morning and afternoon school times, because most of their pupils board. Thank you.
I'm happy to respond to
you
that
would,
if that would
thank you.
help. No, just in terms of the highways, obviously any development that provides for a lack of parking has to be really robustly justified, and we've got other examples within the authority whereby we haven't supported this type of development because of a lack of parking. Now, Oundle is a market town, and in line with the spatial strategy, development is to focus on the market towns, and one of the reasons for that is that because it's a sustainable site. Now, the people that would be living at this site, they would be of retirement age, so we would say 60 plus. They would have, you know, a great sense of independent living. When they purchase or occupy, I should say, this kind of property, they're going to be aware that there is a lack of parking. Now, Highways did look at, and the applicant did talk to Highways about the potential of a bus stop down this road, and it just wasn't a requirement. There wasn't a requirement for a road safety audit, I don't believe. Highways also confirmed that this wasn't contentious and that they didn't need to attend this meeting this evening to discuss this in any more detail, and that there just wasn't a technical objection. So I think the sustainability of this site weighs in favour, whilst I do appreciate the congestion during the school hours.
Thank you. Councillor Marks.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm sorry, my voice is packing up now. Yes, if these were commuters, if these were working age people or people with children of their own, I think there would be very serious concerns. But the paperwork makes clear these are retired people, so that they're not likely to add to rush hour traffic, either themselves or their children, because their children have grown up and gone away, and they themselves are not working.
Thank you. Councillor Jelly.
Thank you, Chair. You know, there are issues with this development, and I sympathise with the fact about medical needs for elder people, but we're a growing older population. We need more 1 and 2 bedroom flats and houses for these sort of people. As Councillor Mark said, you know, they're elderly people, they don't have their children with them. But I think, you know, it's a nice looking development. I'm quite sympathetic to it, and I think it's an ideal location in a very nice place. So I'd be happy to support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other comments councillors wish to make? Councillor Shatlock.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to tell me that the parking's not an issue, but you should understand that some of us do have personal knowledge of this, and it's absolute carnage down there at certain times. And I just think it's unfortunate it's not being taken into consideration.
I think, did you want to come back on that? Because I think there are comments from Highways, aren't there? I know you've just
I think
said
I think I can just to basically just reiterate what has just been said, that, you know, McCarthy Stone have examples of this type of development across the country, you know, where this operates successfully, and Highways, having received further justification from the applicant, they raised no technical objection. on the grounds of highways and the lack of parking. And to be clear, we do have other developments within the area that this would not be acceptable if this was on edge of town in the open countryside, etc. But because of the sustainability of the site, that's why, you know, this is considered okay in terms of highways and the lack of parking. Just one extra comment as well, just to kind of give some comfort to members. I'm sure you have seen that there is a condition to ensure that this stays as older person's accommodation. We did have a bit of a debate actually as to what qualifies an older person, because we're all kind of rapidly heading towards that category, it would seem. But that's on there, and it wouldn't be used as you know, standard C3 accommodation.
So if there are no other comments councillors wish to make, we have a proposer and a seconder. Can I have all those in favour? A show of hands for those in favour. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. We did say we'd discuss carrying on with the meeting after each application. I'm aware that a lot of people have sat through this meeting for a long time and been very patient. Would members be happy if we voted to continue the meeting till 11 o'clock? You would be happy? So we need to vote on it. We need to vote on it again. So if I It has been raised about the good decision making. I am aware that we need to be in the right frame of mind and alert enough to make good decisions. So I'm not in favour of having meetings prolonged after 10 o'clock. I feel very awake actually after this evening, so I need to make sure that members are. So if I propose that we go on and then it's up to members, but please make sure that you are, you feel that you're in a position where you can make good decisions, because otherwise there would be a risk.
Should we do it item by item, continue in that vein?
I said until 11. Oh.
It's up to you.
So would members like me to carry on item by item or up to 11? Item by item. So, councillors, subject to North Northants Council Constitution, Part 3.2, Meeting Procedure Rules, Section 10, we have now reached the meeting guillotine. Therefore, I'd like to seek a proposer and a seconder as to whether we continue the meeting in order to complete the order of business, item by item. Councillor Marks, seconder. Councillor Jelly, all those in favour? Thank you. So that then takes us on to NE/24/00487/ Newbrook Farm, Islington in Titchmarsh. And Lisa, you're taking this.
Thank you, Chair. As stated, this is NE/24/00487 full, and this application seeks planning permission for the erection of a B8 storage building. Now, the key issues in this case are the principle of the development of a B8 storage building in the rural area, the design of the building and the impact on the character and appearance of the area, including the conservation area of Titchmarsh, the impact on the highway and the village itself, the impact on residential amenities, specifically noise and light, and the impact on biodiversity. This site location plan just gives a feel to members of the location of the site and also the village, which is physically separated. And this is the site location plan itself. As you can see, it is located on the western side of Islington. And whilst this isn't an allocated employment site, just by the nature of the character of this site, when you actually visit the site, and I can show you the photograph shortly that will show you, this has the feel of an employment and commercial site. Whilst I appreciate it's in the countryside, it has sufficient boundary treatments, and so the language used within the report refers to this as a commercial and employment site. Now, the proposed floor plans show the width and depth as 9.14 times 18.26, and the height of the building as 5.48 metres. Now, this plan here shows the site itself, and these photographs I took when I visited the site. Now, this storage building would actually replace all of these containers, which have a 2012 planning permission. What we have done is imposed conditions, should planning permission be forthcoming, to ensure, based on the concerns of the neighbours with regards to highways, that this building is just a storage building. Having spoken with the agent for the applicant, I understand at the moment these storage containers are actually occupied by more than one occupier, so the traffic to and from the site would be greater. Initially, Highways asked for further information in this regard, but once they understood the nature of the proposal and that actually this was going to be for one person, one business, and that it would be used for storage specifically and not for distribution, and this could be controlled by condition, they were satisfied that the Highways matters had been overcome. Likewise, with regards to the environmental protection team and in terms of residential amenity, they were happy that due to the physical separation of the site, which I can show you again here, from the village, that there wouldn't be any negative impact, and there was no technical objection raised from them with regard to the impact on residential amenity. Now, with regards to the impact on biodiversity, you can see there that the site is actually formed of hard standing, so the impact would be entirely negligible, and actually we have suggested that a condition is imposed for a biodiversity enhancement strategy, so we can try and enhance this site as much as possible with a condition that could come forward on the consent. Now, in terms of the impact on the character and appearance of the rural area, now this is the view as you approach the site. Now, as you can see, there is already boundary treatments there that do screen the site, and I think as you approach the site, you would appreciate that this has an employment feel, as you can see there, and I would stress that these containers are simply replaced. I appreciate this wouldn't be a like for like in terms of exact sizing, but we have conditions that will ensure that there will be no further storage outside of the storage container itself. The National Planning Policy Framework does support sustainable growth of the rural economy, and I would recommend that members grant planning permission in accordance with the conditions stated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have two speakers on this application. First is Councillor Sylvia Prestwich from Titchmarsh Parish Council again. And as last time, you have 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
Good evening again. Just to remind you, I'm Councillor Sylvia Prestwich, the current chair of Titchmarsh Parish Council, and I am confirming and endorsing the Parish Council's objection to this application. The Parish Council's formal response stated that one of our objections was the size and scale of the proposed storage building, which is not in keeping with the rural nature of our village. This small industrial development, where the proposed storage building would be added, is known as Newbrook Farm. It was built without any consultation or involvement from Northants Council. The farm owner simply adapted his farm buildings to commercial use without asking for or gaining any permission. This Newbrook Farm site is now only legal because of the retrospective planning permission you granted, much to the dissatisfaction of the village in general. This Newbrook Farm industrial development is sited totally inappropriately on the edge of our small rural conservation village of Titchmarsh, with its many listed buildings and our Grade 1 listed church close by. Industrial and commercial development should be sited on brownfield sites or on sites so identified in the local plan, not in rural villages. The application you are considering tonight states that the B8 storage building will replace 3 containers. However, these standard containers which are to be replaced are just 8 feet tall, whereas the proposed B8 storage building is extensive and twice that height. This proposed storage building is on the perimeter of the site and will be clearly visible to all when approaching the village from the south along Islington, creating an unwanted visual impact. The second point made in the Parish Council's objection was expressing concerns about the increased traffic along the road known as Islington, likely to be generated by the use of this new proposed storage building. Islington is already overused by traffic accessing the applicant's site at Newbrook Farm, let alone being able to accommodate increased heavy traffic. The road is a rural village road with no pavements and broken edges. It just cannot accommodate heavy goods traffic as it is without any further traffic. This additional proposed B8 storage unit would be placed in an already inappropriate industrial development in our village. It's just another nail in our coffin. Please turn this application down and stop the commercial expansion in our lovely village. We're just a rural Northamptonshire village and long to remain that way.
Thank you. Questions of clarification from members? No, thank you very much. Andrew Middleditch, the agent on behalf of the applicant. Thank you. You have 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for continuing to sit to consider this application. Although this is not an allocated site, this proposal does relate to development on an established employment site. Permission was granted for the use of this site in 2019-2020. This current proposal relates to the replacement of a number of temporary commercial storage containers which were approved as far back as 2012, together with an area of outside storage, and they will be replaced with a permanent building which will be in keeping in scale, design and size with the other permanent buildings on this site. This does not represent an expansion of the site. The building is intended to be occupied as a single business unit, replacing temporary units which are in multi-occupancy. As such, it will generate less traffic than that associated with the multiple use of the site, and we are glad that this has been accepted by the local highway authority. The development will tidy this part of the site and lead to no wider environmental detriment, as acknowledged by your Environmental Protection Officer. Whilst the building will be taller than the existing containers, it will not impact visually on the wider area, being partially screened by existing buildings along the road frontage and set against the backdrop of much larger and taller buildings which already dominate the site. We are sorry that this application has had to be brought to committee owing to objections from the Parish Council. We acknowledge that there have been concerns about this site in the past, having previously been in agricultural use, but the nature and authorised use of the site was addressed in 2019-2020 and accepted by this authority. We're disappointed that the Parish Council seemed to base their objection on the previous use of the site rather than the current authorised use of the site. This site is now established as providing local opportunities for small businesses with the associated employment which flows from this. This latest proposal does not involve any greater intensity of activity and merely seeks to replace temporary structures with one permanent structure. We're grateful to your officers for their comprehensive report and assessment of the proposal and trust that you'll be reassured by their advice. We hope that you will support this proposal and recognise its consistency with national and local planning policy which seeks to support a prosperous rural economy and the sustainable expansion of businesses within the rural area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you mind just staying unless there's any questions of clarification? No? Thank you very much. NE/24/00487/full. For the purposes of debate and in accordance with the Council's Constitution Rules 19.2 and 19.21, I will move the recommendation stated on page 163 and 174 that planning permission is granted subject to conditions in paragraph 11. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Prentice, thank you. And open it up to the floor for debate. Yeah. I know this area well. That's just on the edge of the village. To the north of that, can you show how far the houses are? There are houses to the north, aren't there? And they're a little distance to the north. No comments from councillors? Councillor Brown?
Just one quick question. Do we know what actual is going to be stored there, and is it going to increase vehicular movements along that narrow road?
Do you want to ask? When I asked, I think I was told there'll be less vehicle movements because it belonged to one person.
Currently there are multiple occupiers for the storage buildings, but this is going to be one occupier who is going to store. I'm just going to check with the agent actually. Andrew, is it confidential what's being stored there? Is that? I'm just sorry. Can I just check? Does it matter?
I suppose there's, in terms of giving details of what's proposed to be stored there, there's no problem with doing that, except that obviously it will be the permission, if granted, will be for that use. So even though the applicant might say, well, I'll store X, they could store Y, as long as it's consistent with the permission. So what value would be obtained from knowing what they propose to store in it? I don't know, it's questionable, but you can obtain that information.
I was just concerned about whether it's going to increase vehicle traffic along that road, that's all, but that's fine, thank you.
I think it will decrease. Councillor Buckingham?
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused because I thought that the agent said that it would enhance opportunities for other work, that it was going to be for employment. So and maybe I should have asked for clarification on that.
No, it's going to remove the containers that are there and replace it with a single B8. And when I looked at the size of that, because I saw that and I thought, oh, but actually it's just under 5.5 metres, and that's less than the height is less than a two-storey house.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councillor Jelly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Didn't the agent say that it was going down to be one occupier rather than multiple
Yes,
occupiers?
yeah, go down to one
so
occupier.
that would reduce the amount of traffic you would assume.
Just if I could just clarify on that, Highways did request further information on that, and to have that in writing that it would be one occupier, and they were satisfied that there would be a lesser intensification, and that a road safety audit wasn't needed.
Thank you. So if there are no other comments from members, we have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour? Oh, that's unanimous. Thank you. So I will read out this again. Councillors, subject to the North Northamptonshire Council Constitution, Part 3.2, Meeting Procedure Rules, Section 10, we have now reached the meeting guillotine. Therefore, I'd like to seek a proposer and seconder as to whether we continue the meeting in order to complete the order of business for the next agenda item. Thank you. Councillor Marks. Seconder. Councillor Jelly. All those in favour? Any against? Right, thank you. So that takes us on to... So were there any abstentions on that last one? No? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, there weren't. Takes us on to NC/24/0022/DPA 25 Coles Road, Priors Hall, Corby. And Fernando, you're taking this, I believe. Callum, can you help out?
Thank you, Chair. This is a planning application for a change of use from C3 residential dwelling to Class C2, which is a residential children's home. and this is located at 25 Coles Road in Priors Hall, Corby. Right, this is a general location within Priors Hall. The red dot is approximate. I'll go on to show the actual site in more detail soon. As you can see, it's just Priors Hall is located north of the A43 road, and it's just north of Weldon as well, the village. This is a site location plan. The application site is edge red, as you can see in the middle. It's just opposite the junction with Slough Close. This is a photograph of the front elevation of the property, showing the side parking area, which has a capacity for 2 cars. Again, this shows the front of the property with the 2 parking spaces visible to the right on the hard standing area there. This is an aerial view just showing the general pattern of development along the street there. It shows that there's a rear garden area that serves the dwelling house at the moment. The key determining issues are the principle of development, the impact on the character of the area, neighbouring amenity and highway safety. Members have obviously read the report, and I would like to keep this presentation short. So just refer members to the update sheet where 4 additional objections have been received, and there's a commentary on the nature of the planning officer's response to each of the points raised there. So, just to clarify, the application is for to care for 1 child, and there'll be 2 carers present on site at all times over the 24-hour period.
Thank you.
So just to finalise, the planning permission be granted subject to the conditions listed on paragraph 11 in this report on page 188 of the agenda pack. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we have one speaker on this, Mark Hamula. Thank you. And again, you've got 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you. Sorry, I should say you're the applicant. I'm not sure I said that.
Thank you. Good evening, members. My name is Mark Makumola. I'm a resident of Corby, Priors Hall. I've lived in our lovely town for the last 9 years. I'm a social worker by profession, currently working and proud to be representing Northamptonshire Children's Trust. Through my experience as a social worker, it has become apparent that most of our vulnerable young children within the county placed further afield from their home, away from their families and friends. The Northamptonshire Trust Placement Sufficiency Strategy identifies that there's a national shortage of residential placements within the country, and more so within our county. With this thought in mind, my partner and I thought that we could open our doors to our home to look after 1 young vulnerable person between the ages of 11 and 18, most likely with additional needs, learning disabilities, mobility difficulties. And we thought that we'd be able to offer a young person a good home to be at and get the support that they need. We believe that every child matters and every child deserves a good start in life, and the beginning of any success means that any young child needs to have a good home. This is why we thought that we should put this planning application in place so that we can offer our home to 1 young vulnerable person within our county, and perhaps bring out a success story through pathway planning and leading up to independence. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions for clarification? No, thank you very much. For the purposes of debate and in accordance with the Council's Constitution Rules 19.2 and 19.21, I'll move that the recommendations stated on page 181 and 188 of your agenda papers, that planning permission is granted subject to conditions in paragraph 11. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Marks. If I open the floor for debate, Councillor Best.
Just to say that we had a very similar application, I think a couple of meetings ago, similar in principle, quite similar in detail, which I believe we approved, so I don't see why this wouldn't be any different.
Thank you. And the proposal is to use the existing dwelling for one resident child, with 2 members of visiting staff, and the driveway is dual double length. So we have a proposer and a seconder. If there are no other comments, we'll go to the... So, Councillor Prentice. Oh, right. We've got a proposer and a seconder. So if there are no other comments from members, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And then, therefore, this is the last one, if members agree. Councillors, subject to the North Northamptonshire Council Constitution, Part 3.2, Meeting Procedure Rules, Section 10, we have now reached the meeting guillotine. Therefore, I'd like to seek a proposer and a seconder as to whether to continue the meeting in order to complete the order of business. Councillor Marks proposing, Councillor Colquhoun seconding, and then all those in favour. Thank you. That's unanimous. Councillor Shatlock is leaving the meeting. This is the last item on the agenda, and Pete, you're taking this, I understand. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's right. I'm taking this one. So apologies if what I'm saying doesn't really match up with the PowerPoint as such. I'll try best I can. I'm taking it on behalf of another officer who can't be here this evening. So the proposal is for the conversion and minor extensions to redundant agricultural barns to provide 4 dwellings at Friars Close Farm in the village of Barnwell. The application is brought to committee this evening as it falls outside of the council scheme delegation, as it has been submitted on behalf of a councillor or their close relative, by the sounds. So the site is located on the periphery of the village of Barnwell, but forms part of a farmyard which is well established. In terms of the principle of development, planning policy firstly focuses housing within the built-up areas of defined settlements. In this instance, Barnwell has a defined settlement as indicated in the adopted neighbourhood plan. The site falls just outside of the settlement boundary and is considered to be right on the edge and on the whole quite well connected to the established form of the village. Planning policy allows housing outside of settlement boundaries in a number of exceptional circumstances. In this case, the reuse and conversion of the barns on the edge of the settlement is a key factor and is therefore in accordance with policy EN3 of the East Northamptonshire Local Plan Part 2, which allows for this specific type of development. In terms of the design and appearance of the scheme, as you can see from this block plan, it keeps very much to the existing farmyard form. Here's a photo, or 2 photos, which should hopefully give you some sort of indication of the existing barns. They will remain largely as you see them in these photos. As for the proposal, it's a conversion, so it's important that the materials are appropriate for its setting and for the buildings themselves. All materials will be secured via condition to ensure a high quality finish. Officers consider that the proposal is sympathetic and complementary to the site, therefore it's deemed acceptable in terms of its visual impact. In terms of residential amenity, it's considered that the proposal would have no significant impact on neighbouring or future occupiers of development. This is all set out in paragraph 7.5 onwards of the committee report. In regards to highways impact, the proposed development provides sufficient parking on site for all residents. The local highway authority have no objection to the proposal, but do note that Main Street itself, which is just outside of the site, is substandard in parts. It falls below 2 metres in width in certain areas. Whilst this is not ideal, it is not considered to be the responsibility of this application to resolve. Main Street serves a great number of dwellings in the village, and it's not considered that these additional 4 dwellings will cause any significant or severe harm to highway safety or the way that Main Street currently operates as a road, as is seen across many villages across the district. Finally, due to the nature of the development, ecology was also a key consideration, and you will see conditions 9, 10 and 11 safeguard both newts and bats. So in this sense, the development is in accordance in terms of its possible impacts on protected species. So in conclusion, the proposed conversion of the rundown farm buildings is acceptable in planning terms, will improve the appearance of the site and have no significant negative impacts on neighbours, highway safety or ecology. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the conditions in the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 speakers on this. Councillor David Brown from Barnwell Parish Council, if you'd like to. Thank you. And when you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
I'm David Brown, Chair of Barnwell Parish Council. The Parish Council has no objection to this plan, so you might wonder why I'm sitting here. But I wanted to just say that we did have some reservations which we think could be mitigated in the conditions attached to the permission if it's granted. I'm thankful for the report of the officers, page 212, which gives planning officers response to these points, but I feel they need strengthening. Number 1, we ask that the development be recorded as an exception as part of the development is outside the development boundary. Maybe all of it is. I thought it partly was in the boundary. While this is referred to in section 9.1, we prefer a stronger statement including the word exception, as we're anxious that this application should not be used as a precedent for development outside the settlement boundary. Number 2, the development highlights the condition of the highway, Main Street, outside the site, which is rutted and subsiding. I was therefore surprised to read that the local highway authority stated that there was no concerns about this section of road, apart from the narrowness of it. It's in a terrible state, it's subsiding, and it's got holes in it, so extra traffic is not a good idea. I'm hoping that councillors may be able to use their influence in addressing this issue. Number 3 was about the possibility of incorporating measures to protect bats and barn owls into the building rather than attached on external boxes. This would give some protection in the long term. It's all very well putting up a bat box, but the first person that occupies it is quite likely to take it down, or it's quite possible to take it down. Surely this could be incorporated in the building or the buildings, therefore it's more likely to be there in perpetuity. I can't say it. Not at this time of night. Number 4 was about the style of roof lights, and this has been fully addressed. I hope you will be able to make these small adjustments to the conditions and give consent for this application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the final speaker tonight is... Oh, sorry. Do members have any questions of clarification of the speaker before? Sorry. Thank you. So the final speaker for this evening is Will McCormack, who's the agent for the applicant. And when you're ready, you have 3 minutes. And thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, councillors. My name is Will McCormack from Harris McCormack Architects. We're responsible for the design work of this scheme. Would it be possible, please, to put up the proposed block plan? We've been working with a design team on this project for over 15 months now, having gone through a lengthy pre-planning application process. The planning application itself was submitted just after Christmas last year, and it has come under microscopic scrutiny from many consultees and many comments that have been raised about it. A highly qualified professional team have spent a lot of time looking at all the concerns that have been raised, and the reports that have been submitted have led to a recommendation from the professional team here to recommend approval. My job tonight is to talk very briefly about the buildings. If we look at the block plan, please, if you will, Units 1, Units 2, Units 3 and 4, where the title is written, are all standing existing buildings in structurally sound shape, but they are deteriorating. The two wings that project down from Unit 1 and Unit 2 are original built form of the farm layout. Unfortunately, they are now dilapidated and mostly collapsed. The scheme is therefore to regenerate these two wings and incorporate them into Units 1 and Unit 2. Units 3 and 4 exist and are in very good condition. The link building, the structure that links the two buildings together, does not exist. So that would be a brand new extension. It's single story, it's in keeping with the local vernacular. The barns are a mix of brick and stone, and the materials proposed will match that. Unfortunately, we've got corrugated tin roofs on part, but the new roofs will be blue slate. What is unusual about this is it's a farm barn conversion, and two of the units are only one bedroom. So Units 3 and Units 4 are single bed, single story units. Unit 2 is a double height space, so there would be potential for 4 bedrooms in Unit 2. Unit 1 is all single story and is a 3 bedroom. Our job really here is to restore these buildings, is to repurpose them from a redundant agricultural use. They will never be used as agriculture anymore. The farmhouse was sold off a while ago, and these buildings now stand in limbo. They are worthy of retention. They bring a positive contribution to the original character of the village. They are a typical range of farm buildings that we believe are worthy of being restored and repurposed. The planning authority agree with that, as I say, over a 15-month period of working through this application. So we would respectfully ask that the officer's recommendations are upheld. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do members have any questions or clarification of the speaker? Councillor Buckingham.
Sorry. So you've heard what the parish council have said. Would you be...
That's a clarification. That's a question. I think the question to the speakers should be for clarification only. I think that's an additional question. Yeah, I'll allow that. Continue.
Okay. Would you be acceptable to what's been proposed, or you just want to go with the officer's recommendations?
So my understanding is the officer has recommended conditions, and the parish council, who have said they support the application, want more robust wording on some of those conditions. I would leave that to the planning team to confirm the wording of their conditions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there no further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
So NE/23/01318/ Friars Close Farm, Main Street, Barnwell, Peterborough. For the purposes of debate and in accordance with the Council's Constitution Rules 19.2 and 19.21, I will move the recommendation stated on page 195 and 214 that planning permission is granted subject to conditions in paragraph 11 and the amended condition 2 as shown in the update sheet on page 7. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Marks. I open the floor up for debate. Councillor Best.
I guess the obvious question to officers is, do we think we can accommodate some or all the requests of the parish council in the conditions without making a fresh application?
In terms of the question, so were they, I've got scribbled down here, so highway rutting, was it? And
yes.
bats,
The one was about it being an exceptional site, but I think that was in your report, isn't it? So
yeah, in Jackie's report. So in terms of exceptional site, I mean, planning policy is quite clear that housing should be restricted to within settlements, especially in villages. So an exception to that is rural buildings. So you're probably aware of other rural buildings that come forward under permitted development rights, so where farmers have buildings and they convert them. This is kind of a form of that, but is in policy. So we have a policy EN3, which is on the East Northamptonshire Local Plan Part 2, which basically talks about rural buildings on the periphery of settlements. So it's very specific. So it's, if any other applications come forward on the edge of settlements where there are rural buildings, they will be also subject to that same policy. So it is an exception to the spatial strategy. So in that regard, I think it's covered off in planning policy principle terms, so I don't think there'd be any need for a condition to secure that, as it's already secured through policy.
condition of the roads.
Condition of the roads, again, I think that obviously falls outside of the... that falls outside of the site. Again, if you look at this plan here, not sure if you can see the village obviously extends south here, extends north here, so all of these buildings will currently drive on that road as well. So I don't think it's the issue for this application to solve it, because obviously there are plenty more dwellings down here which also use the road, also right up the road. They'd also be responsible for the kind of quality of that road. So it'd be a highway authority would need to be contacted in that regard. In terms of bats, I'm not a bat expert. I don't know what needs to go into buildings and their design. I know that they'll be getting a licence from Natural England, so Natural England will be in control of any kind of bat mitigation on site as the expert. So again, I wouldn't feel comfortable as an officer trying to mitigate something that I don't know anything about, really. So, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Marks, did you have your hand up earlier? No. Councillor Jelly?
Yeah, I think it's a great use of some derelict buildings, so yeah, I'm all for it. Good job.
I agree. It'll tidy the area up. And I think there were anything that's a lot of the concerns in the have been raised have been addressed in the report. Any other comments from councillors? Therefore, we have a proposer and a seconder that planning permission is granted subject to conditions in paragraph 11, and the amended condition 2 is shown in the update sheet on page 7. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And can I thank everyone for their patience this evening and staying so long, their stamina to stay as long as we are. Thank you. There are agenda item 7, urgent exempt items. There are no urgent or exempt items, and therefore I close the meeting at, I've not got the correct time on here, 22:56. And thanks once again for your patience.